Investigation into the matter seems to indicate that there is a conflict of opinion among authorities as to where the point of contact is which the astral line of force makes with the bodies. We know, at least we should know, that there are so many different conditions involved, so many differing individual makeups, such various and intermingled degrees of matter, that naturally some experimenters arrive at conclusions which are at variance with those of others. One authority holds that the astral cord adheres to the physical body at the solar plexus, situated just behind the stomach. Another maintains that the spot is low down on the forehead, between the eyes. And still others, and they seem in the majority, maintain the belief that the point of contact is at the medulla oblongata. I believe that the latter is true, and that the evidence for this outweighs all evidence to the contrary. If all these claims can be vindicated, then the controversy lies only in the opinions of their originators. The truth is that the cable can extend from any of the several vital centers of the body. One well-known authority on the subject, who ranks second to none, and whose word carries much weight, is a staunch adherent to the belief that the astral cord finds its point of contact at the solar plexus, i.e. of the physical body. But where does it join the astral body, if this be true? Does it center at the solar plexus of the projected body too? Surely, if it does so, the conscious astral projector must find himself in a clumsy condition when within cord activity range. This is what my experience has revealed. I have never found the cable making contact with the physical body at the solar plexus, but I have observed it to do so at the front, side, and back of the head. But, with me, the astral end has invariably adhered to the medulla oblongata region of the phantom. I make this suggestion, however, that the experimenters who hold to the solar plexus point of contact use suggestion to that effect while developing. Be that as it may, the reason why the astral cable fastens at different spots of the physical head is because of the position of the physical body at the time of projection. The astral and physical bodies coincide. In whatever way the physical body lies, so will the astral lie. If the physical be facing upward, while lying in the horizontal position, the astral will emerge facing upward also. The astral cable will thus come out of the physical at the front of the head, between the eyes, and fasten onto the phantom at the back of the head, the medulla oblongata region. I might add that this is the ideal position for projection. On the other hand, if the physical be facing downward while lying in the horizontal position, the astral body will emerge facing downward. The astral cable will thus circle from the medulla oblongata of the physical, directly over the top of the head, to the medulla oblongata of the phantom. If one be conscious, when a projection from this position occurs, he will feel the astral cord circling over his head, in the astral, and it will feel like a piece of soft hose, in which there are regular pulsations. I had the following experience several years ago, which illustrates this point, turning over in the air. The first perception I had in this experience was that my head was drawn downward until my chin rested upon my chest, and that something was thumping me on the top and back of my head. An instant later I was awake in the astral, and found that my head was drawn downward, my chin was resting upon my chest. The thumping in my head was due to the pulsations in the astral cable. In this condition I was lying in the air, just under the ceiling of the room. I could not move voluntarily, and seemed to be smothering. I was lying upon my chest, physically, and was likewise facing downward in my astral body. Thus it was that the astral line of force pulled my head downward, and I could feel it resting upon my head from that point, then down, over the top of my head, as plainly as if it had been a piece of garden hose, fastened to the back of my astral head and pulled over the top, forcing my head onto my chest, and pulsating all the time. This experience proved conclusively to me that the astral cable is always attached at the medulla oblongata region of the astral body, for there never would have been a better time for it to have been attached elsewhere, yet it made contact at this point, which on this occasion was not an ideal arrangement. For several moments I stayed in this position, then I noticed that I was beginning to turn over onto my side. I thought that my head would be twisted from my body. The turnover movement continued until I eventually found myself lying upon my back in the air. This once accomplished, the controlling power began to move me outward and downward into a standing position. Just why the ruling intelligence found it necessary to turn me over in the air before completing the projection, I do not know. On interiorization, the same process took place in the reverse order. I was pulled first from the upright into the horizontal position, i.e. to a point directly above my physical body. This movement took place while I lay face upward in the air. I was then turned over and slowly dropped, face downward, into the physical mechanism, which lay face downward upon the bed. If this experience could be considered typical, it would appear that lying upon one's back is the ideal position for projection. The forebrains of man, of course, where the astral cable appears to make contact with the head, and where it actually ends, are two different questions. The cable might appear to the projector to be centered at the medulla oblongata, the front, or the side of the physical head, depending upon which side faced upward at the time, and still it would only be apparent, and the cable might actually end inside the head at the pineal gland, for all we know. There are 4 large nervous or psychic centers in the body. For brains of man they are sometimes called the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata and the solar plexus. Besides these there are the pituitary body and the pineal gland. Because projection of the astral body depends in some degree upon concentration centered upon one or more of those centers, we must discuss them briefly. The cerebrum, divided into 2 hemispheres, is the frontal portion of the brain, within the cranium. The cerebellum lies behind and below the cerebrum. The two are connected by a short stalk, known as the midbrain. The solar plexus, abdominal brain, is in the abdomen, just behind the stomach. It is complexly composed of material similar to that composing the other 2 brains. The medulla oblongata is a bulbous continuation of the upper end of the spinal cord, extending into the skull and lying below the cerebellum. It is a peculiar arrangement of divisions, strands, of the ganglia connected with the 2 neighboring vital centers. It is well known that, within the medulla oblongata, are located certain nerves which have control over the functions of respiration. I leave it to the reader's judgment whether this would not be an ideal spot for the astral line of force to connect with and thus deliver the force of respiration. The pineal gland situated within the brain is a peculiar organ, the pineal gland, which, until recent years, was a source of mystery, although the Orientals have long held that the gland has significance in relation to the occult. The pineal gland, aside from its physiological importance, is now recognized by many Western students of psychics, as well as by the Orientals, as being a connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds. Swami Bhaktivinoda states, the pineal gland is a mass of nervous substance which is found located in the brain, in a position near the center of the skull, almost directly above the extreme top of the spinal column. It is shaped like a small cone, and is of a reddish-gray color. It lies in front of the cerebellum and is attached to the 3rd ventricle of the brain. It contains a small quantity of gritty particles, a sand-like substance, which is commonly known as brain sand. It derives its scientific name from its shape, which resembles a pine cone. The Oriental occultists claim that the pineal gland, with its peculiar arrangement of nerve cell corpuscles, and its tiny grains of brain sand, is intimately associated with certain forms of transmission and reception of waves of mental vibration. Western students have been struck with the remarkable resemblance between the pineal gland and a certain part of the receiving apparatus employed in wireless telegraphy, the latter also containing small particles which bear a close resemblance to the brain sand of the pineal gland. The pituitary body, situated in front of and below the pineal gland, is another organ regarded as having an occult significance. There is a connecting link between the 2 bodies, the pineal gland and the pituitary body, over which, it is claimed, a subtle force operates. Drive W. H. Downer says, on this subject, molecular motions in the pineal gland cause spiritual clairvoyance, but to make this clairvoyance illumine the field of the universe, the fires of the pituitary body must unite with the fires of the pineal gland, and this union means that the 6th and 7th senses have become as one. Or in other words, that the individual consciousness is so indrawn that the magnetic sphere of the highest mentality and the highest spiritual sense is conjoined. Considering the important functions of any or all of these vital centers, one would be perfectly safe in asserting that the astral cable can deliver the breath of life into any one of them, while the phantom is projected, and that the energy would be properly distributed, for after all the nervous system is in tune, one part with another, throughout the entire physical mechanism. Some authorities have found that concentration upon the pineal gland, properly concentrated thought, of course, will facilitate the projection of the astral body, and there is little doubt that a line of force will be created at the spot upon which the subject concentrates. The force is not created by the physical nervous center, the physical nervous center is operated upon by force. The cosmic energy, none of the vital bodies mentioned in the foregoing can create the force which operates through them, they are but its distributors, rectifiers, transformers, the complicated mechanical arrangements that the energy of life works through and upon. Because the physical body can be destroyed, that in no sense destroys the force behind the body, any more than breaking an electric bulb would destroy the energy operating through it. It is interesting to know that there have been people who have had portions of their brains taken out, without apparent ill effects. Geely, in his work, From the Unconscious to the Conscious, cites many such, the surgical operations having been performed upon soldiers, in France, during the war. Physiologists do not believe that the vital energy, consciousness, sensibility, motivity, can exist apart from the physical mechanism, believing that the material body itself creates the energy. The main reason for their belief is that it cannot be proved that the physical body does not create its energy. But it cannot be proved that the physical body does create its energy either, therefore there is no foundation for that belief. The physical body itself cannot even hold the energy of life, that energy being held in the astral condenser, and poured through the physical, during projection, by means of the line of force, running to a vital center of the physical mechanism. To discuss astral phenomena, even life itself, without discussing the energy which is behind it all would be like building a house without a foundation, like discussing electrical appliances and ignoring the force which operates them. Perhaps it has never occurred to you that the energy you are using is cosmic, present everywhere, that it is not created by you, but is attracted by you and condensed in your astral body, which, as you have already learned, does its recharging during sleep, and therefore has an important bearing upon astral projection. You must realize, also, that food and diet constitute an important factor in the phenomenon of astral body separation. The ordinary belief concerning energy is that it is created by the body, that to eat so much food will produce so much energy. If this idea were true, we could easily substitute food for sleep, and the minute we felt ourselves becoming tired, weak, or enervated, simply eat more food, and thus never need sleep. If this were true, the more food we injected the more energy we should create, but scientific investigators have found that to stuff the invalid only makes his condition worse. Food is material, like the physical body, and builds up the body because the cosmic force operates upon it, not because it produces energy in itself. Dr. Lindlar's views on energy. Let us now turn our attention for a few moments to what Dr. Henry Lindlar, world-famous food scientist and exponent of nature cures, has to say in answer to the question, for what reason do we eat and drink? Says Dr. Lindlar, the majority of people would reply, why, everyone knows that from food and drink we derive our strength. Are you so sure about this? Do you really believe that the large amount of animal heat and vital energy which the human body manufactures, radiates, and expends every 24 hours is derived from a few pounds of food consumed in the course of the day? Any hard-working laborer or athlete spends an enormous amount of power and energy every day. A healthy individual may continue to do this for several weeks without taking any food whatever. The best proof that not all the heat and muscular energy of the body are derived from the combustion of food materials is furnished by a long fast. Of late years, since fasting has become popular as a natural remedy, many thousands of people have fasted from 4 to 10 weeks at a stretch. The majority of these marathon fasters report but slight loss in physical energy. Many claim that they are stronger at the end of the fast than at the beginning. The loss of animal heat is negligible. While in some cases the temperature declines a fraction of a degree, or a degree, in the majority of cases it remains normal. We have verified this in hundreds of cases under close observation in our institutions. To cite a case from personal observation, one of our patients suffering from typhoid fever did not take any food except water for 7 weeks. At the end of that time his body temperature was normal. During the last 2 weeks of the fast he lost only 2 pounds. Another patient afflicted with cancer of the stomach lived 2 years on a few ounces of food daily, mostly white of egg and fruit juices. His temperature was normal almost to the last. Whether sweltering under the tropical sun of the equator or freezing in the Arctic cold, the temperature of the body is exactly the same. If it drops or rises a few degrees below or above normal, death ensues. This regulation of animal heat, regardless of the surrounding temperature, and, within certain limits, regardless of the quantity and quality of food consumed, is one of the greatest mysteries of our wonderful human organism. If foods were the only source of animal heat and working energy, fasting for a long period would be impossible. The temperature of the body would sink below normal soon after the commencement of the fast. It may be said that, while abstaining from food, the body lives upon itself, that it consumes its own tissues. This, however, does not account for the production of all the heat and energy expended during the fast. Continuing this subject, Lindlar says, if foods, do not give life, what, then, are the functions of food and drink in the economy of the body? All that they can do is to furnish the materials to keep the system in such a condition that vital force can manifest in and through it. The inflow of life force into the cells and organs of the body and its free distribution, by way of the nervous system, depend upon a normal or healthy condition of the organism. Anything and everything in natural methods of living and of treatment that will help build up the blood on a normal basis, that will purify the system of waste and morbid matter, that will correct mechanical lesions and harmonize mental and emotional conditions, will ensure a greater supply of life force and its derivatives, strength, vitality, resistance, and recuperative power. In other words, the more normal, healthy, and perfect the organism, the more copious will be the inflow of vital energy. Foods, fasting, and psychic development. When such exhaustive researchers as Dr. Lindlar must go outside the body to find the source of its vital energy, is it not time for others too to recognize this omnipresent force working all about them and through them? It is impossible here to go into the study of foods and dietetics. The study of food and its effects upon life constitutes a science in itself. Plainly, different foods bring about different conditions in the body, some seeming to supply more energy, some less, depending, no doubt, upon the way in which they attract or repulse the vital energy which is cosmic, and which is held by the astral body, the condenser of cosmic energy. It is probable that the negative and positive charges in foods, in some unknown manner, affect the astral body. The physical body is built up by the foods because the basic elements of matter constituting both foods and flesh are united, but the energy is manifested in and through the astral counterpart. There is an occult doctrine regarding food, says Carrington. It is that a vegetarian diet tends to make the molecules of protoplasm shorter and more sensitive to shorter wavelengths. It is quite conceivable that it should actually do this. We know that a bar of iron becomes magnetized when all the molecules of its structure are, as it were, pointed in the same direction. If you strike a magnet of this type a sharp blow with a hammer, or heat it red hot and allow it to become cool again, it will be found to have lost its magnetism. What has happened? Probably the molecules of iron, which before had been uniform in their polarity, are now pointing in all directions, and hence the energy which formerly played on or through the bar of iron, in one continuous unbroken stream, is now broken up, and playing in 1,000 different directions. Hence the iron will no longer be a magnet. It is possible that something of the same sort takes place in the body, and that its molecules, when finely attuned by rhythm, and acting in unison, may allow a flow through the body of energies which would otherwise be limited or altogether restrained in their action. This is merely by way of suggestion, which one may take for what it may be worth. Mr. Prescott F. Hall, in a most interesting article in the Journal of the American Society of Psychical Research, says, a vegetable diet tends to loosen the vibric matter of the astral body, and vegetables, fruits and prunes make the blood able to attract spiritual power. Carrots also are beneficial. Nuts, especially peanuts, are bad, especially near the time of sitting for development, as they tend to make one's atmosphere of one color. Raw eggs are favorable. Liquids are favorable to development. Fasting often helps the liberation of the astral body. You will notice that Mr. Hall has stated that liquids are favorable to development, yet he does not state in what way they are beneficial, nor to what type of development. I must take exception to this, and shall shortly point out that, in developing astral projection, abstinence from liquids constitutes an important positive factor. However, Mr. Hall is correct in his assertion that fasting often helps the liberation of the astral body. It is enough to say that food is one of the most vitally important factors of life, but it is as necessary to eat the right kind of food as it is to eat at all. I know that, in stating this fact, I shall arouse the ire of many spiritualists, who think along the lines of mental healing and Christian Science, their motto being, "Leave the food question alone, the mind will take care of that." While healing by the power of the mind is not by any means an untruth, the idea that one can ignore the food question is ridiculous. Food is as necessary as breathing. Why not stop breathing, and let the mind take care of that? The question is, do these people eat? If so, why? They will answer that they eat because it is necessary to sustain physical life, but that it makes no difference what they eat, just so it be labeled food. Now if it be necessary to eat at all, it is necessary to eat properly. I wonder if the mental healers could eat dirt and, by using their minds, make it nourish their bodies? They would say, dirt is not food. But many of the things eaten by us every day belong to the same category. For instance, it is not generally known, but many investigators know, that much of the so-called whole wheat sold in America is little less than ground corn cobs. Concoctions sold for whole wheat sometimes contain as much as 3/4 of the stuff hogs refuse to eat. Dr. Ward and others have pointed this out, after investigation. If it be true that the mind can take care of the food question, why not let the mind take care of eating too? There is just one standpoint in this matter: if it is necessary to eat at all, it is necessary to eat the proper elements of food. Eating, breathing and sleeping are natural laws. We cannot ignore a single one of these without suffering ill effects, not in this earthly life, at least. Fasting increases the inflow of cosmic energy, but of the three sources of energy, sleep is the most important, and it may readily be seen that if we could eat, drink and breathe properly, we should sleep less, and still retain the needed amount of energy, and that, if we slept more, we should not require the usual amount of food. And this is one of the reasons why fasting is promotive of astral projection. When the fast is in progress, one of the secondary sources of energy is cut off, and in order to retain in the system the needed amount of energy, the astral body at night is thrown further out of coincidence, in order to collect a greater charge of cosmic energy to balance the loss. That is why people can undergo long fasts without losing energy, and in some cases actually increase their energy. Some may say, how is it that, while taking a fast, the patient sleeps no longer, yet retains enough energy to make up for the deficiency? In other words, how can the subject collect more energy while fasting, through sleep, than while not fasting, and still sleep the same length of time? The answer is that it does not depend upon the length or duration of sleep, but upon the distance of separation of the astral and physical bodies during sleep. Remember that the astral body discoincides from the physical during sleep for the purpose of recharging, and the further out of the physical it emerges, the more easily does it condense the cosmic force. Thus we can see the relation of fasting to astral projection. The more profound the sleep, the more inactive the body, or the more incapacitated, the greater will be the distance which the astral counterpart will move out. That is why, in the hypnotic sleep, the subject can derive as much benefit in a short time as in a much longer period of natural sleep. The Orientals grasped the significance of this cosmic force long ago. They called it prana, and Swami Bhaktivinoda defines it thus. It is a subtle form of energy permeating the universe, but manifesting in a special form in the organism of the human being. This subtle force, or prana, is held to be capable of being transmitted from one organism to another, and it is held to be the energizing power by means of which many forms of occult and magic phenomena can be produced. Prana is very much akin to the human magnetisms of the Western occultists, and the properties attributed to the latter are really those which the Orientals for centuries past have held to be among the essential properties of prana, so, at the least, there is found a practical agreement here between the Oriental and Western schools of occultism, respectively, in spite of their differing terminology. This cosmic energy has many faculties. One of these is the healing faculty. Every ill that is cured by cosmic energy. Medicine, chiropractic, Christian Science and every other healing method depend upon the prana to bring about the cure. All that any curative method can do is to assist. When ailing, if you take a fast, you not only assist nature in clearing the poisons from the body, but you automatically increase the inflow of cosmic energy, the curative energy. America's foremost authority on yoga, Muldoon Carrington, states in his Higher Psychical Development that the Hindus have a whole mythical system of physiology. They claim that there are certain energy carriers, or nadis, as they call them. There are 72,000 of these, and each of them has innumerable ramifications. If you take a scalpel or a knife and dissect the human body, you will not find these centers. But the Hindus say, they are not composed of physical matter but of astral matter, therefore, not having any astral senses, you cannot see them. These energy carriers are the storage centers and the chief means of circulating the prana. Again, in the same book, we find, doctors say we need more sleep, about 8 hours usually. If you sleep 8 hours a day, you spend a third of your life in sleep. It seems rather a waste. The Hindu said, cannot we get rid of some of this waste? Cannot we reach a state in which we no longer require sleep? By following out these exercises, this system of diet and living, which Mr. Carrington explains in detail, they were enabled to cut down their hours of sleep very much. In practice, we find that the curve of sleep runs thus: we start with what we call the threshold of consciousness, it sinks when we fall to sleep, and then gradually rises again, so that immediately after you fall to sleep you are at the deepest point, and from that point it is a gradual upward curve until you awaken. The query is it not possible to deepen that curve so that you enter into deeper sleep, and require less of it? The Hindus think they have found a method of artificially deepening sleep, and not spinning it out so long, and we in the West have partially done this by means of hypnotism. All this has an important bearing upon the subject we are studying, viz. Astral projection. I believe this is the first time anyone has ever put forth the claim that the astral body discoincides during sleep for the purpose of recharging, and that the depth of sleep and the amount of recuperation depend upon the distance between the astral and the physical bodies, i.e. the greater the distance of separation the freer the inflow of cosmic energy, or prana, into it. And does not all this show us convincingly that the weaker the individual the more adaptable he is to extensive projection of the astral body? I assert, in spite of what other authorities maintain, that morbidity is a positive factor in projection. For my part, I cannot see what reasons can be advanced to refute this statement, although I readily admit that it is far more dangerous to attempt extensive or prolonged projections with an ill-functioning physical mechanism. Do not form the idea that I am advising you to produce morbidity intentionally, as a positive factor to projection. I am merely trying to make it plain how perfectly ridiculous is the claim that good health is a necessary factor in the art of astral projection. If this were true, that good health is necessary, the nearer one came to death, the weaker he became, the harder it would be for him to die, permanently project. But common sense shows us that this is not true. Another common belief is that we burn up our energy. But what we really do is externalize our energy, i.e. the neuric energy externalizes from the astral body. In the individual of nervous temperament, this externalization is very pronounced, and that is the reason why the individual is neurotic. I believe it was mentioned that this externalization of energy can be measured by certain instruments. If you could cut off the excessive externalization of energy in the neurotic individual, the nervous temperament would disappear. It is easily seen that persons of nervous temperament require more recharging during sleep than individuals of other temperaments. One set of bodily exercises and postures will cause the cosmic energy to externalize, while another set of exercises and postures will cause the energy to interiorize. It has been discovered that fear will fill the bloodstream with poisons, almost instantly. It is claimed that, for this reason, a person becomes weak when in the grip of fear. I am going to tell you why fear weakens, and this is the first time anyone has made this claim. Fear externalizes the neuric energy from the astral body, automatically weakening the victim. Nothing causes externalization of nervous energies as completely and as quickly as fear. If it were true that energy is burned up, there could be no condition of instantaneous enervation, such as we have when in the grip of fear. Energy is omnipresent and indestructible. It is not created, nor is it burned up. It is internalized and externalized, and it is condensed in the astral body. When projected in the astral body, unconscious, one can observe this neuric energy, that is, he can see its color and condensation in the bodies of others. It is luminous, like white light. It is this energy which gives the astral body its phosphorescent appearance. It is the scintillations of this condensed energy which trail along behind the phantom, when the latter is moving at the intermediate speed. Although the glow of the neuric energy can be seen throughout the entire body, it is condensed mostly in the center of the body. It is very luminous in the center of the body, at the solar plexus region. I have noticed this many times. Andrew Jackson Davis used to say that he always saw the nervous system in the interior of the body as though full of light. It is my belief, from astral observation, that the great storehouse of condensed energy in the human being is located at the solar plexus region. We have physiological indications, too, that this is true. I told you that fear causes instantaneous externalization of neuric energy, and true enough, we always feel the effects of fear in the solar plexus. The astral projector, when conscious, can see the neuric energy. It is interesting to know that spirits usually speak of mediums as lights. How fasting aids astral projection, since we are speaking of energy being cosmic, and not produced wholly by the foods we eat. Let us recall what Christ said of food: man does not live by bread alone. Christ was known to undergo long fasts, and there is good reason to believe that he did so in order to produce spiritual phenomena, perhaps to aid him in traveling in his spiritual body. We have learned one of the reasons why fasting tends to liberate the astral body, and, to avoid any misunderstanding, we will review it. Sleep, food, and breathing are the sources of bodily energy. Sleep is the main source, for, as Schopenhauer said, sleep is to the individual what winding is to the clock. Food is a secondary source of energy, and thus, when a fast is undertaken, this secondary source of energy is shut off. The astral body, the condenser of energy, always discoincides from the physical during sleep, for the purpose of recharging, and during a fast must take in, condense, a greater quantity of prana to make up for the deficiency caused by the fast. The further out of coincidence, the more energy the astral body gathers, the more easily it recharges itself, or is recharged. Hence, during a fast, it moves out further into the stream, which means nothing more than that it projects further than the zone of quietude, normal sleep. This is but one reason why fasting is a positive factor in projection of the astral body. There is another reason, which will be discussed under suppressed desire. It has often been observed that sometimes a blow, or what not, which produces unconsciousness, will cause the victim to feel more energetic after regaining consciousness. The reason is obvious: the astral body moved out some distance into the cosmic stream of energy. And here is another observation I have made: consciousness uses up energy. Consciousness, merely being awake, uses up energy just as exertion uses it up. You can sit still or lie motionless, and be conscious, and you use up energy. Here is something else I wish to impress upon your mind: although the astral body recharges, when it moves out of coincidence with the physical, or separates from it, unconsciousness is necessary in order to reap the full benefit of the recharging. If you project the astral and retain consciousness all the time, you will not recharge the astral body. Unconsciousness is a necessary factor in conjunction with separation. I have noticed many times that, after experiencing an entirely conscious projection, I felt still enervated upon recoinciding with the physical, in fact more so than upon retiring. And, on the other hand, I have found that, when the projection was unconscious, i.e. when I merely caught myself in the act of interiorizing and therefore knew I had been projected, I always felt invigorated, sometimes even to the extent that, upon awakening, I actually believed I could fly off the ground. It is very common to experience a dog-tired feeling after an exteriorization that has been conscious, accompanied by a headache in the back of the head. I am convinced, for my part, at least, that spirits in the lower planes must become unconscious, for consciousness uses up energy, no matter whether one be in the astral body or in the physical body. There is strong evidence to support the contention of many occultists, viz. that sleep, unconsciousness, is not brought about by a condition of the material body, but is caused by some agency outside the physical body. Such theories as cerebral hyperemia, cerebral anemia, and all other material influences must be discarded. They do not cause sleep. Neither does the withdrawal of the astral body, for even that entity sleeps, and can be unconscious and projected, or conscious and projected. Chapter 8. Although, in the majority of cases of astral projection, consciousness is chiefly a matter of chance, that is, it seems to be chance, whether or not consciousness be present, there is little doubt in my mind that schemes could be worked out, or influences brought to bear, which would have some effect in bringing full consciousness to the projected entity. Of course, it is possible to be conscious from the very beginning of exteriorization, but this is not usually the case, and, in many projections in which I have become conscious, I have analyzed the causes which, I believe, aroused consciousness. Some of these causes are not unlike those which bring about consciousness while the bodies are in coincidence. Unless consciousness be present from the very beginning of a projection, it will first begin to manifest itself in the form of a dream. It seldom comes suddenly, but slowly, when the phantom is projected, a dream always preceding it, and it works itself out of the dream. If the dream corresponds to the action of the phantom, consciousness is more likely to appear. That is why dream control is such an important factor. I will now tell you of an awakening which illustrates this point. You will then see the difference between dream consciousness and real consciousness. A dreaming true experience. I was dreaming that I had entered a massive hall with a high ceiling, skylights, and colored windows. It was a large room when I first entered it, but after being within it for a short time I noticed that it had changed. It was now a small room, and there was but one small hole in the center of the ceiling through which I could see light. As I remember the dream, the room was about 12 feet square, and I stood on the floor in the center of the room, looking up through the hole in the center of the ceiling. That was the only opening through which I could escape, since the doors and windows which I had first observed had disappeared. There I stood, looking up and wondering how I was ever to escape. There was no way in which I could climb up to the window, for the walls were perfectly bare, and there was nothing in the room upon which I could stand. So there I stood, looking up through the hole in the center of the ceiling. It seemed that I stood there for some time, when suddenly I wondered if I could not fly through the hole. I began to rise into the air, but as I was passing through the hole I became caught fast in it. Half my body, from my hips down, remained inside the room, and the upper half was outside. There I was, stuck fast. I could not move either way. At this point I began to awaken and realize what was taking place. I found myself projected. Yes, it was the same old story, awakening from a dream and finding myself exteriorized. But the interesting thing was that the position of the body, astral, corresponded with the position it held in the dream. I was just halfway through the ceiling of the room, when I became conscious. That is, I had moved upward, directly over the shell, had upright, and was half above and half below the ceiling, on awakening. This is merely one of the many awakenings I have experienced when emerging from a dream, and I have noticed every time that when the dream corresponds to the action of the astral body, real consciousness generally appears. When the dream corresponds to the action of the astral body, it will always cause that body to exteriorize. Awakened in the astral B-wire noise. Here is another example in which noise participated. Before retiring, one evening, I had been reading of an Indian massacre. The leader of the band of Indians was named Little Priest. After going to sleep, I began to dream. I was in a clearing in the wilderness. The clearing was quite large, about 60 feet square. I had a gun with me, and, as I was passing through the clearing in the wilderness, I suddenly saw Indians poking their heads through the trees and underbrush all around me. I raised my gun and began to fire at them, first at one and then at another. It was one continual bang, bang, bang. It seemed that the gun I was using made a very loud noise, unusually loud, making me tremble every time I discharged it. Yet I could not stop shooting, or the Indians would get me. But that awful bang, bang, bang. How it went through me. Next I saw the chief of the Indians. It was Little Priest, and he was coming through the clearing toward me, to kill and scalp me, I feared. So I turned the gun toward him and fired, bang, bang, bang. But I could not seem to hit him, and he was getting nearer and nearer. As he approached me, I dropped the gun and began to cringe back. But the bang, bang, bang continued. It was growing more distinct. I was forgetting about the Indian chief. I was conscious. It was a windy night, and the screen door, outside, was slamming back and forth in the wind, bang, bang, bang. I found, when conscious, that I was projected in the astral and standing near my shotgun, behind the door of the kitchen. But that was not all. There stood an Indian spirit, and he said, "You call Little Priest." These are but two examples of how one becomes conscious when projected in the astral body. I could cite many, many more, but that would take a book as large as this one. Considering only the last case, had I been within chord activity range, when this banging and fearful Indian fighting commenced, an interiorization would have resulted, because of the emotion. You can readily see how consciousness is faintly functioning in a dream, and that it is but a step from a dream to complete awakening. The dream world. There is a dream world. When you are dreaming, you are not really in the same world as when you are conscious, in the physical, although the two worlds merge into one another. While dreaming, you really are in the astral plane, and usually your astral body is in the zone of quietude. The distance of separation has nothing to do with it. Once detached, whether slightly or remotely, you are in the astral plane. Perhaps this is the first time you have ever realized that you enter the astral world every time you go to sleep and discoincide. The fact that you stay in the zone of quietude does not make you any the less in the astral world. When out of coincidence, you are attuned with, or in harmony or vibration with, both astral and physical worlds. You can be conscious, partially conscious, or unconscious, either within or out of coincidence. In a dream, you are partially conscious, and can be discoincided. Your mind is thus a receiving station for the vibratory waves, ether waves, carrying with them thoughts, sounds, influences, music, voices, and what not, of two worlds, and it is through the reception of these impressions that many dreams are instigated. When you fall, or really rise, to sleep, if the conscious mind be locked up partially, it functions in conjunction with the subconscious, and the material for dreams is obtained from the thoughts, noises, etc. of two worlds. If the conscious mind be locked up tightly, you do not dream, or I should say, you do not remember having dreamed on awakening. When you are asleep, your vibration reception ability is greater than when you are physically awake. When sleeping, you are not unlike a medium, but, being unconscious, you do not realize it. If partially conscious, you are open to the vibrations of two worlds. If you awaken from a dream in the physical body, your vibration reception ability is attuned to the physical plane, and if you awaken from a dream, while projected in the astral body, your vibration reception ability covers both astral and physical planes. The dream state lies between complete consciousness and complete unconsciousness, so you can see that, once projected and dreaming, it is but a step into complete consciousness. The astral body has well been termed the dream body, for it is in that body that we dream, even though we may be in coincidence, or but a fraction of an inch out of coincidence, or completely separated from the physical. Instigation of dreams cannot be credited to any single cause. The influences which bring them about are so numerous, cryptic, and subtle that it is doubtful whether we shall ever understand the true significance of nocturnal fantasy. But we can, by using the knowledge we have gleaned, use dreams to promote astral projection. Concerning dreams, there is one rule which one must remember: when the action of self, in the dream, corresponds to the action of the astral phantom, the dream will cause the phantom actually to exteriorize. The skeptic may say, how do you know that, if the action of the self in the dream corresponds to the action of the phantom while projecting, it will cause projection? There is but one answer: experience proves it. Although it takes the reader but a couple of seconds to read that rule, it took the writer several years to discover and prove the rule to be true. Now, accepting this as true, all that it is necessary to do is to be able to dream true, which can be done, keeping in mind the route which the phantom takes, and molding the dream in accordance with it. Naturally, the dream must be of an aviation type. You can dream true, but unless you understand the route taken by the phantom, and apply it to the dream, the dream, will have no pulling out effect upon the astral body. It is only reasonable to suppose that a properly applied dream should do this. The mind is partially conscious during a dream, and the dream acts as a suggestion to the subconscious will, the power which actually moves the etheric counterpart. Recall the fundamental law of projection: when the subconscious will becomes possessed of the idea to move the body, coinciding bodies, and the physical body is incapacitated, the astral body will move out of the physical. It is the dream proper which gives the subconscious will the suggestion to move the body, and the physical is incapacitated, the astral being in the zone of quietude, so that the astral body is pulled out by the dream, which must be of an aviation type. The proper dream suggestion is as certain to project the astral body as a conscious suggestion to walk will start you walking subconsciously, when physically awake. It is the same subconscious will which moves the body, or bodies, as the case may be. If you ask me which is the most pleasant way to promote astral projection, I should answer by saying dream control. There are several methods of promoting this seeming miracle, but every method must rest upon the same fundamental law. And assuming that some would like to attempt projection by means of dream control, I shall now give the instructions for doing so. Later I shall go into other methods. My advice here, however, is that the reader does not attempt any method until first studying the entire contents of the book. The dream control method of projection for several nights after you retire, several weeks would be better. Watch yourself during the process of going to sleep. Try to concentrate your thoughts within yourself. Think of nothing and no one but yourself. Try to keep a close watch upon yourself as your consciousness grows dim. Try to remember that you are awake, but still going to sleep. You will catch the significance of this when you try it, far more than you do now, while reading it. After you have learned to hold consciousness well up into the hypnagogic state, until you actually are enveloped in sleep, then you must go a step further and construct a proper dream to hold in mind, while going to sleep. Remember, the dream must be constructed so that you are going to be active in it, and further, it must be constructed so that the action you go through will correspond to the route taken by the phantom when projected. What do you like to do? Swim? Ride in an aeroplane? Go up in a balloon? A Ferris wheel? An elevator? Be sure and do, in your dream, the thing you like to do. If you select something you do not like, the sensation will interiorize you, for it will be unpleasant. Do that which will give you a sensation which you like, and if you become fully conscious, once you are projected, you will like the sensation which you will actually get from the phantom floating in the air. This will go a long way toward ultimate success, to have the action in the dream of such a nature that you enjoy the sensation. Now let us suppose that you enjoy going up in an elevator. This is the formula I use. You have already learned to hold consciousness up to the time you go to sleep. Lie upon your back. Think within yourself. You are lying upon your back on the floor of an elevator. You are going to lie there quietly and go to sleep, and as you enter sleep the elevator is going to move upward. And you are going to enjoy the sensation of going up as you lie upon your back on the floor of the elevator. Now it is trembling a little, getting ready to go up to the top story of a large building. Slowly, quietly, it is going up, going up, going up. You are conscious that you are moving upward. You are enjoying the sensation to the utmost. It is nearing the top story now. It has stopped. You are going to rise to your feet and walk out of the elevator and round the floor of the upper story of the building. You are going to look all about you as you walk round, observing everything. Now you are going to walk back into the elevator and lie down upon your back on the floor. Slowly you are moving downward, slowly downward, and now you are lying on your back on the floor of the elevator, on the ground floor of the building. I have stated that this was the dream I constructed for the purpose of inducing the astral body to emerge from the physical. Now, it is important to use the same dream over and over again, for if you try first one dream and then another, the subconscious will not be impressed with the construction of the dream as strongly as if you repeat the same one over and over each night, as you are entering sleep. Have the dream vividly worked out in your mind, and hold it before you as your consciousness is slowly diminishing. Shift yourself right into that elevator just as the moment of unknowingness comes to you, and the astral body will move upward in the elevator. It will upright itself above the shell, just as you dream of standing up when the elevator reaches the top floor. It will move outward, just as you dream you are walking out of the elevator. Likewise, on the return, as you walk into the elevator, the astral will move to a position directly over the shell. As you lie down, the astral will resume the horizontal position. As the elevator lowers itself, the astral body will lower itself also. The dream is a suggestion to your subconscious will, and that will act accordingly. You should be able to remember the dream after awakening. Another advantage of this method is that the astral cable does not annoy one as it does when a projection is induced by other methods. If one can project oneself by dream control and move some distance away, and then become conscious, one should never know that cord activity range exists. The big problem lies in gaining consciousness when once one is projected. Remember that the dream consciousness is not the true consciousness, although you can remember the dream. The projection of the astral body, the proper dream, will always project the phantom. Now, it is not necessary to employ the dream I have mentioned. You can construct your own dream, making it appropriate in every respect, in action and sensation. Perhaps you think that you can dream this sort of dream, and that the astral body will not do as I have stated. Don't deceive yourself. It will, even though you are not clearly conscious. When I first experimented along this line, I found that repercussion of the body would take place, at times, but that was always because I had dreamed that the elevator descended too quickly. I found also that I could produce repercussion of the astral body at will, merely by imagining myself falling from a high building, as I entered sleep. I would hold this thought in mind, that I was falling from a high building, and soon after going to sleep, I would repercuss. All you need to do to convince yourself that these things I am telling you are true, is to follow the instructions, and find out for yourself. If you like to swim, of course you must plot the dream so that as you are in the water, the water, must rise, bearing you upward. Then, when you have been raised to a position when the water floods its banks, you swim outward. This follows the action which the phantom takes in projection. Many, no doubt, will say that they could never project their astral body into space, that they could never disconnect one body from the other, yet every time one goes to sleep the astral counterpart moves out of the physical. To some extent, every time you have a falling dream your astral body has been projected, and is returning as you dream of the fall. But the big problem, I repeat again, is how can one project and possess true consciousness while projected? I have said that consciousness is more or less a matter of chance, and I have tried a few experiments in which I succeeded in bringing about consciousness, which I do not think would have appeared on these particular occasions, but for the factor which I then introduced. I shall discuss this matter shortly. However, now that we are on this subject of dream control, a few more suggestions for dream plots will not be amiss. The main action, of course, is the upward movement, in getting the phantom out, so, even though the sideway action is not equally realistic, always have the upward movement of self vividly pictured in the mind, and, if possible, with the body, in the dream, lying in a horizontal position, as it moves upward. Plan your dream as you would plan an important matter in daily life. The mere fact that it is but a dream does not lessen its significance in moving the phantom. Here are a few suggestions for dream plots, some of which I have taken from Dr. Carrington's Higher Psychical Development. See a mental image of yourself in a mirror, your own picture. Construct, as it were, or imagine, a mirror about 20 feet behind you in space, and picture yourself walking backwards into that mirror. Another exercise is to endeavor to lift yourself out of your body to a point about 18 inches above your own head, like Baron Munchausen lifting himself by his own bootstraps. Imagine that you are steaming out of the body, coming out of all the pores. Now this steam is collecting just above you and is forming a replica of yourself and is then carried upward on the air. Climbing a ladder is another good exercise to construct mentally, likewise climbing a rope. The writer has had many projections which were brought about by dreams of climbing a ladder. Another, and a very good one, for it corresponds closely to the action of the phantom, while exteriorizing, is to imagine a tank gradually filling with water, on the top of which one floats. The object is to find a small hole in one side of the tank through which one passes out. However, if the subject has a fear of water, such an exercise is not advisable. On the other hand, for one who likes water, bathing, swimming, floating, a better exercise could hardly be constructed, for the action of the self is correct and the sensation would be pleasant. Another is to imagine oneself whirling. Whirling objects are much used in development work. The dervishes and other Orientals resort to whirling exercises, which doubtless have this fundamental object of loosening the astral body from the physical, and in inducing ecstatic states of consciousness as the result. You will recall what I told you formerly, i.e. that dizziness is merely a condition of looseness of the astral counterpart. Epileptics usually begin to whirl just as a spell is coming on, often making several complete revolutions of the body before catalepsy begins. The image of a revolving star is used to stimulate the activity of the astral body. Concentration upon the image of a whirlpool, the sense of expanding and contracting the body is very useful, as is that of being carried along on the surface of a wave. One very useful exercise is the image of a cone. The image of a cone in one form or another is quite common in development work, because it involves the idea of contracting to a point or expanding from a point, thus passing through a waterspout or an hourglass-shaped space, is an image used. Construct a cone of circles becoming smaller and larger, and turning such a cone inside out, or making a revolving disc assume the form of a cone, and flatten out again into a disc, is another. Holding the image in mind of a flame of fire, and endeavoring to identify yourself with the flame is another very useful mental image to stimulate the activity of the astral body. If you could really see an astral body while projected, it would appear like a white flame, holding the human shape and dimensions. A good exercise for this purpose is to close the eyes, then roll the eyeballs until they are fixed at a point on the forehead, between the eyes, in much the same way as the yogis do, and make a concentrated effort to gather together your psychic energies at that point. Will, with the whole force of your being, that you are there, and when you have concentrated your full self at the spot, then will that you shall be projected outwards, in space, from that point of departure. This method is a strain upon the eyes, but is one which has been found very effective, as the result of numerous experiments and experiences. Here is a very effective developing exercise. Lean back in an armchair in such a manner that you can look directly into a mirror, a real mirror, which is about 4 feet in front of you. Relax, rest in peace, think only of yourself. Now try to go to sleep, watching through partly closed eyes the image of yourself in the mirror. Continuing, you will eventually become drowsy and your head will begin to nod, but just keep watching the image in the mirror. This is an almost automatic way of developing, for as the astral tries to withdraw, your head tends to fall. If the astral does withdraw, the head will drop. Thus you see, the state you are trying to attain consciously is more impressive, for the instant you are about to rise to sleep, your head begins to fall, which at once arouses you slightly. The next step is to imagine that you are floating out of the chair into the air of the room, just as you are in this condition, the condition in which your head wishes to fall, in which you are really going to sleep, in which the astral body is really moving slightly out. You have doubtless noticed that the instant a person falls, rises, to sleep, the physical body seems to collapse slightly, and that if there be any member of the physical body which is not resting upon something solid, it will fall, also that this has the effect of slightly reviving the subject. Now this principle can be employed in order to stimulate consciousness as the astral body is trying to withdraw, for it is the withdrawing of the astral which brings about the relaxation. You may have observed that this principle was employed in the last exercise given. It can be employed likewise while going to sleep in the horizontal position. It is interesting to try this and note the consequences. After retiring, hold your dream construction before you, and at the same time hold one arm in the air, so that it will fall when you go to sleep. Now, as you enter the hypnagogic state, the arm will begin to sway, to fall, and this will slightly awaken you, for you must not let it fall. In this way you force consciousness further into the hypnagogic state. It is not at all unusual, when trying this exercise, for the subject to feel breathless in the region of the stomach, just when the arm is falling, and he will jump slightly to stop it. This slight jump is nothing less than slight repercussion of body. Even subjects most unadaptable to projection can experience what I have just described, can actually feel the astral moving, by following this formula. This is a good exercise to practice, for, in order to dream true, you must be able to hold consciousness up to the very moment when you rise to sleep. It is true that some people never have a consciousness of going to sleep, in fact most people do not, but until the subject can experience the consciousness of going to sleep he will never be able to dream true. It is not as difficult to cause the projection of the astral body by the dream control method as you might think. Once the etheric begins to rise, the dream impresses the action of the dream body and the action of that body impresses the dream. This may be a little difficult to comprehend, but it is true. The whole trick lies in the proper start, in the proper condition of the mind at the takeoff. You do not have to start the body, it will start itself as you enter sleep, but you must get into the dream and keep the body moving onward. The astral naturally moves out of coincidence at the moment of sleep, it naturally starts itself, and that is just the moment when you must mentally project yourself into the upgoing elevator, or whatever the dream may be, and keep going. The dream body, of course, is nothing more nor less than the astral body in a partially conscious condition. In such a dream the astral body acts out exactly whatever the dream may be. A properly constructed dream is as sure to move the astral body out, as the dream of falling is to move it in. The queer thing about this type of dream phenomenon is that you dream what is actually happening, so far as the action and sensation in the astral body are concerned. It is natural for the inexperienced investigator to say that the dream might begin by holding true to the plot and then divert from it, but it never will. The dream holds the astral activity true, and, being a reality, the dream is true. If you become completely conscious in such a dream, you would usually find yourself in some place corresponding to the place of action which was last seen in the dream. That is, if you used the elevator dream, e.g., and became conscious just as you were uprighting yourself at the top story, you would find yourself in the astral body upright directly over the shell. I care not how nonsensical this may seem to anyone, it is the truth, and I have found it to work out, time after time. It is a pleasant and certain way of projecting the astral body into space. The swaying of the astral body from a photograph published by Dr. H. Derville. Summary of THE Dream Control Method. I shall now sum up this method of projection of the astral body through dream control. 1. Develop yourself so that you are enabled to hold consciousness up to the very moment of rising to sleep. The best way to do this is to hold some member of the physical body in such a position that it will not be at rest, but will be inclined to fall as you enter sleep. See exercise given in the foregoing. 2. Construct a dream which will have the action of self predominant. The dream must be of the aviation type, in which you move upward and outward, corresponding to the action of the astral body while projecting. It must be a dream of something which you enjoy doing. 3. Hold the dream clearly in mind, visualize it as you are rising to sleep, project yourself right into it and go on dreaming. In the dream the elevator, or whatnot, begins to move upward coincidentally with the projection of the astral, that is, you imagine that you are starting upward the very moment you rise to sleep. That is the bare formula for inducing projection of the astral body by means of dream control, and every part of it must be strictly adhered to. It is no idle fantasy, but a tried and proven method. Of course, as you learn of other methods, you can naturally weave other promotive factors into this scheme of procedure. You will find that if, before retiring, you read a story or article which is fascinating to you, which holds you in suspense, a story of men who work at great heights, a story of daring aviators, such as birds' flight to the North Pole, you will strengthen your efforts to project by the dream method. The very night after I took my first aeroplane trip I experienced a dream of it, and, awakening from that dream, found myself projected. Inquiring of others who have likewise experienced their first trip, I found that most of them had an aviation-type dream shortly afterward, and that several were falling dreams, with repercussions. So you see that an impressive activity, along the lines of your plotted dream, during the day, even though it be but the reading of a thrilling aviation story, will bring forth positive results by night. If, by following this formula, you have a dream, you will remember it, and you can depend upon it that the astral body, the dream body, participated. However, do not mistake dream consciousness for real consciousness. Now the next, and probably the most difficult, step is to bring that dream body to real consciousness, after it has been projected, and preferably outside cord activity range. Bringing consciousness to the dream body. A partially conscious projection is a step in advance of unconscious projection, and conscious projection is still a step in advance of a projection which is partially conscious. Either the phantom will awaken by chance, the reason for the awakening being unknown, or else some means must be devised by which you bring true consciousness about. So far as I know, there are but two influences which will serve to awaken the projected phantom, other than the natural awakening. These are sounds and properly applied suggestion prior to the projection. The latter is by far the more successful, and the former, i.e. sounds, will work only when the phantom has advanced outside cord activity range. Inside that range they, sounds, will have the opposite effect and interiorize the phantom. It will be found that the more one projects the more liable consciousness is to intervene, of its own accord. I have noticed, also, that the place at which consciousness appears once, will be the place at which it will intervene again, if the phantom happens to cross that spot while somnambulistic in the astral. Why this should be I do not know. However, I have a theory. Have you ever traveled, say along a road in an automobile, and, at a certain place, thought of a certain thing? And, even weeks later, have you ever traveled over the same route and, at the same spot, thought of the same thing which you had in mind when on that spot formerly? Of course you have, and as you recall it, it seems to you that the locale, the spot, suggested the same things to you that you had in mind when on that spot before, even though those objects sustain no relation whatever to what you have now in mind. For instance, every time I pass a turn in the road about a mile from where I live, I think of a circus. Just why, I do not know, yet every single time I pass that turn, I visualize a circus. Now, that is just what happens in the astral. If you are somnambulating, and I might say that the astral body has a habit of following the same course, time after time, although it does take other courses, and you become conscious at a certain place. You will find that if you ever cross that spot again in the astral body, you will again become conscious there. There are many, many people who are out in their astral bodies, somnambulating, every night. But they do not know it. I wager that the world would be greatly surprised if it knew how common unconscious and partially conscious astral projection really is. Now, as the astral body moves forward, if it is in a dream state, the environment along its pathway will influence the dream. Those dreams which are vivid, in which we seem very active, dreams that we have dreamed over and over again, may be, and usually are, astral somnambulistic dreams. Now sometimes, during such a dream, the route is not misconstrued very much in the memory, and, during the waking hours, should we happen to pass over the same route, or a similar one, which the phantom was traversing during the dream, we should recall the dream. But this is not all. The next time we have the dream, we know that it is a dream, and thus we dream that we are dreaming. Now this may seem difficult to understand, but that is the way it works. It is a strange phenomenon, this dreaming experience. Let us now go still further. What dreams do you have over and over again, in which you take an active part? Do you ever dream that you are dreaming? If so, what is the dream about? Can you find a locale in your waking hours which will induce you to recall the dream? That is, where are you, in the physical body, when you suddenly think of having been in a similar place in your dream? These are the things which you must notice. If you can harmonize these conditions, try to act out the dream in your physical body, go over the route, while thinking of the dream, and, as you are doing so, tell yourself that the next time you dream of reaching this spot you are going to awaken, at this tree, in this doorway, etc. The dream may recur again soon, spontaneously, or, by thinking about it, as you enter sleep, you may produce it intentionally. If the dream actually were an astral somnambulistic dream, the suggestion that you will awaken at the given spot, as you reach it in the astral body, will be one of the strongest possible factors toward restoring complete astral body consciousness. The suggestion is not unlike the suggestion given to the subject in the hypnotic state, to awaken. The operator says, "I'll count 5, then you will awaken," or "Now walk straight ahead, and when you get to that door you will awaken." The dream gives this suggestion to the mind of the astral somnambulist, who is in the dream state. If you have located the spot, or a similar one, where you were in the dream, and go over this route in your physical body, exactly as you recall the dream, and then tell yourself that when you get to this tree, this door, or whatnot, in the dream, you will awaken, this suggestion will be fulfilled as you walk up to the door, tree, etc., in the dream body. This is the most certain way of bringing consciousness to the projected phantom, even though it does involve a study of your dreams. Of course, once you can produce an aviation type of dream, and remember it, the thing to do is to suggest to yourself, just before going to sleep, that you will awaken at a certain place. I have a friend to whom I gave these instructions. He was quite successful in producing the proper dream, but when the suggestion, to awaken, should come forth, he would dream that he was dreaming, and dream that he could not awaken. Take, for example, the elevator dream. Tell yourself that after you have been lifted to the top floor of the building, and have left the elevator and walked away from it, that you will then awaken. This is a simpler method, but not as effective as the complicated dream study method just given. Always use good judgment in suggesting the spot where you wish to awaken, making sure it is not too near the physical body, or you might awaken within cord activity range, which is to be avoided if possible. Let us suppose for a moment that you sleep on the lower floor of your home, or on any floor, so long as there are other floors above you. You have planned an elevator dream, in which you will be carried upward, will upright yourself, walk out of the elevator and walk around on the upper floor of the building. A good thing to know is the setting, the way in which things really are arranged on the floor above you, and mold your dream accordingly. Find one object on the floor above you, a door, a window, something that will be in your path in the dream, and, as you are holding the dream construction before you, on going to sleep, suggest to yourself that you will awaken when you reach that object. In this way, when you approach it in the dream body, the suggestion will be fulfilled. The suggestion that you will become conscious upon reaching a certain place in your astral body will always be more effective than merely the suggestion that you will become conscious somewhere in the astral body. Suggestion of place works in the same way in the astral as time does in the physical. Perhaps you have tried suggestion to replace the alarm clock, and, by suggesting, upon retiring, that you will awaken at a certain hour, you have been enabled to do so. That is the way in which a place that affects the astral body simply will that you awaken at a certain place in the astral body, just as you will to awaken at a certain time in the physical body. Although the proper kind of dream, the aviation type, will seldom fail to pull out the dream body in practically all cases, the nervous, temperamental person is so susceptible that he will often be projected spontaneously, while asleep, and while one temperament can have a dream, not necessarily of the aviation type, but just an ordinary dream, in which his dream body does not move out of the zone of quietude, the nervous type might have a similar dream, and his dream body would move out and enact the dream. In other words, while the aviation type of dream will usually pull out the dream body with all types of people, even an ordinary dream will often project the dream body in the nervous type. When this occurs, one can never tell what the phantom will do, but its action will always be found to sustain some relation to the dream. The phantom may be projected to the very locale which the subject is dreaming about. If the locale is a product of the imagination in the dream, the phantom may find a locale that is similar to the one which the mind created. The phantom may linger about objects which are similar to objects seen in the dream. As an example of this, recall the dream I had in which I was shooting Indians, and, becoming fully conscious in the dream body, I found myself standing near the spot where my shotgun stood, EXP number 11. You may dream of a lake or even of the ocean, hundreds of miles away, and, if the dream body moves out to participate, it may be projected to the ocean, or it may only project to the pond just across the street from where you are asleep. Chapter 9. Action. We have spoken of individuals projecting spontaneously, and have stated that a certain type, the nervous type, often does so. But this is not because of their adaptable temperament alone. The subconscious will must first decide to move the body, for otherwise even the subject of nervous temperament will not project. Recall the fundamental law of astral projection, when the subconscious will becomes possessed of the idea to move the body, coinciding bodies, and the physical body is incapacitated, the subconscious will moves the astral body out of the physical. Of course, it is no trick to cause the subconscious will to move the coinciding bodies, when we are fully conscious and are capable of moving. We do this every day. All we need to do is to suggest to ourselves that we walk, and the subconscious will keep us walking until it receives further instructions. The subconscious will, therefore, is not so mysterious after all, we are using it every day. How can this subconscious will be induced to move the astral body when we are asleep? That is the important question, and I will show presently how it is done. But first, let us do a little reasoning. If the factors which stimulate the subconscious will to action, unintentionally, can be discovered, cannot these same factors be put to work intentionally, and produce the same effect? Of course they can. M. Flammarion once said, "There are two methods of investigation in all scientific problems, that of observation and that of experiment." And that is exactly how the present writer acquired his knowledge of astral projection. By careful observation, analysis, and experiment, during conscious, unintentional projections, I have been enabled to determine those factors which arouse the subconscious will. First, I shall enumerate these factors, next, explain them, and then show how to put them into use, for the purpose of producing projection of the astral body, dreams. 1. Aviation type. 2. Dreams which arouse desire and habit. The projection of the astral body be desire. To possess or do something, not a necessity. 1. Intense desire. 2. Suppress desire. See the bodily desires, necessities. 1. Hunger. 2. Thirst. 3. Enervation, lack of cosmic energy. D. Habit. 1. Long-standing habit. 2. Routine. 3. Desirable habit. 4. Broken habit. Some of the factors listed are not as strong as others, as you will learn soon. We have already discussed the first group, dreams, have seen how the subconscious will is activated by them, and have also learned how to use dreams to promote projection. Next we shall discuss groups B, C, D. The subconscious will does not constitute the entire realm of the subconscious mind, the latter is so vast that it can work within itself, so to speak. The subconscious mind can suggest some action to the subconscious will, as it does during sleep, if one of the factors which I have listed happens to come to the surface, or is strong enough to remain at the surface of the subconscious mind during sleep. That is, the suggestion to the subconscious will, to move the body, when we are asleep, comes from the subconscious mind, just as the suggestion, to move the body, when we are awake, comes from the conscious mind. It is the same will that moves the body, regardless of the source or mind from which it takes the suggestion. The only reason why the astral moves out of the physical in the former case, while we sleep, and not in the latter case, while we are awake, is simply because the physical counterpart is incapacitated in the former state. So far as the suggestion is concerned, the subconscious will respond as readily to subconscious suggestion as it does to conscious suggestion. We can readily see that the prime requisite is to impress one of these activating factors so strongly upon the subconscious mind that that mind will retain the impression during sleep. This can be done by way of the conscious mind, by repeated action, as in routine, or suggestion, as in a desire, or, in some cases, by combining both action and suggestion. When we impress one of these activating factors upon the subconscious mind, there often occurs an unintentional projection, while the subject sleeps. Here is the explanation. Perhaps you have formed the habit of going to a certain place. You persist in this habit and, in doing so, you impress it upon the subconscious mind. Now, if this impression becomes strong enough, and comes to the surface during sleep, the subconscious mind suggests that you repeat the action, and the subconscious will is imbued with the suggestion. Other factors being favorable, temperament, inactivity of the physical body, etc., projection of the astral body will result. Students have said that there is spontaneous projection of the astral body, yet there is always some underlying cause. The reason it is called spontaneous is merely because these causes intervened, and conditions favorable to projection were brought about, unknowingly. Ordinary habit and ordinary desire, although they will sometimes bring about projection, in the proper temperament, will as a rule not impress the subconscious mind so strongly. Intense desire and long-standing habit, as you can see, will make a stronger impression upon the subconscious mind, and are therefore more positive. In fact, long-standing habit and intense desire root themselves in the subconscious mind. Suppressed desire and broken habit act similarly. After a habit has been deeply rooted in the subconscious mind, that mind learns to express the habit. That is why it is a habit, it seems to have a desire to express the habit, a determination to express it. That is why habits are so difficult to break, because they are expressed by the subconscious mind, in which they are rooted. Now, if you have a deep-rooted habit, and suddenly break it, the stress of expression becomes intensified in the subconscious mind. You can feel this stress within you. So while you sleep, the stress, the desire for expression of the habit, the determination to express it, which has accumulated in the subconscious, breaks loose, and the subconscious will endeavors to move the body in order to perform the habitual act. Suppressed desire works similarly. You have a deep-rooted desire, and, unless you can appease that desire, you must hold yourself back by conscious effort. Yet within yourself you keep on desiring, desiring, desiring. You would satisfy that desire in a moment, if it were not for some obstacle. So, by desiring and preventing yourself from appeasing that desire, you increase the stress within the subconscious mind. You can feel the urge of expression boiling within you. You are at war with yourself, so to speak. The stress of expression becomes so great within the subconscious mind that it bursts forth when you sleep and can consciously prevent it no more. Thus the subconscious will is impelled into action. Hence, the breaking of a long-standing habit, or the suppressing of a desire, will act similarly, and are stronger factors than mere habit or desire. The whole secret of causing the subconscious mind to suggest to the subconscious will is that stress of expression, which can be accumulated in the subconscious mind. Some occult experimenters believe that it is the subconscious will which is strengthened, that it is the subconscious will which suddenly bursts forth. This is not true. The subconscious will is superpowerful at all times. It is that stress of expression which is strengthened and bursts forth, it is not the subconscious will itself. Remember, the subconscious mind and the subconscious will are two different things. You could not strengthen the subconscious will so that it would burst forth by night. What you do is to strengthen the impression in the subconscious mind, that stress of expression, and this merely acts as a suggestion to the subconscious will, which carries out the suggestion. You make the impression, habit, routine, desire, etc., so strongly established in the subconscious mind that it comes to the surface, or remains on the surface, after you go to sleep, and thus acts as a suggestion, which it really is, to the subconscious will. Suppressed desire, broken habit and routine are the three outstanding factors that stress the subconscious mind and cause unintentional projection, provided, of course, other factors are favorable. Routine is any regular course of action adhered to day after day, work, pleasure, etc. If you could watch an unconscious projector during the course of the projection, you would often see that the phantom was following the routine which the subject was accustomed to follow during the day. The subconscious mind has the action so deeply rooted in it that the phantom begins to follow its habitual course. Routine and habit are more or less intermixed. And there is another reason why the person who is bedridden by sickness will often project. Everyone follows some routine, and the action becomes, through repetition, deeply rooted in the subconscious mind. Whether you are aware of it or not, there is always a stress there in the subconscious mind, and this is one of the strongest stresses we possess. We have all heard of people who just must work, because they say that they get irritable if they stop or retire. That is because the stress of the routine is there. So long as you continue the daily action, you will work off the stress and therefore do not notice it. But if, suddenly, you break the routine, you will feel the urge within you. Farmers especially seem to have this stress of routine strongly rooted in their subconscious minds. They will stop farming, try to live in town, and it will not be long before they are back on the farm again. They must work off that urge. Now, when a person is suddenly compelled to break his routine, perhaps through sickness, the stress in the subconscious mind will begin to accumulate, because it is not worked off, just as gas accumulates in a bottle, and, if it were not uncorked at times and allowed to escape, would finally blow up of its own accord. This stress would become so strong that it would remain on the surface of the subconscious, or come to the surface of the subconscious, while the patient slept, and the subconscious will would be brought under its sway, and attempt to move the astral body out of the physical and perform the routine action in question. Now it may seem a little strange that if we adhere tenaciously to a routine, it will strengthen the stress of it, and to break the routine will also strengthen the stress of it, but a little reflection will show you that this is true. And, incidentally, this agrees in part with the findings of Dr. Charles Lance Lynn, a French scientist of note, who uses tenacious routine to develop astral projection. I will give the substance of what Lance Lynn has to say along this line. At the same time, I beg to disagree with Dr. Lance Lynn when he states that the success of the experiment depends upon the power which the subconscious will possesses, for I maintain that it is the power of the stress of expression in the subconscious mind which suggests to the subconscious will that one must develop the stress, and not the subconscious will itself. However, we both agree that tenacious routine brings about the result. The first thing to do, to ensure the success of our astral projection, according to Lance Lynn, is to dynamize the will, to hyperdynamize it, in fact, so that it is overcharged and capable of bursting forth, like champagne, when the cork is removed. There are various methods of doing this. One of the simplest is to repeat to oneself many times just before dropping off to sleep, "I have will, I have energy." This must be kept up until sleep intervenes and the memory is lost. Then one may think of the next day's work clearly, in detail, and make up one's mind not to deviate therefrom, even under great pressure and temptation. This will give the subconscious will a force that nothing else can equal. The subconscious will thus strengthened, etc. We can see from what Dr. Lance Lynn has to say that a tenacious routine has been found by him to be a promotive factor, just as I maintain that it is, even though we disagree as to the reason why. Tenacious routine is really an aid to projection. Naturally, I believe Dr. Lance Lynn is mistaken in his belief that the subconscious will is strengthened. If we examine the matter carefully, we shall find that it is the impression made by the routine which is strengthened. It is the rooting of the habit which becomes so strong that it bursts forth, thus suggesting to the subconscious will to perform the action. Imagine the subconscious will as a locomotive, and the stress as the engineer. Now, in order to get the locomotive to move, the engineer must cause it to move. The locomotive will not move of its own accord. Any of the factors which I have listed, when coming to the surface during sleep, will suggest action to the subconscious will. The subconscious will must obey this action. If it were true that it was dynamized so powerfully that it could not hold itself back, the subject would surely be in a predicament during his waking hours, for his suggestions would then amount to naught. Remember this, it is the suggestion which bursts forth, not the subconscious will. And the suggestion may come from either the conscious or the subconscious mind. If the subconscious will could operate without first receiving a suggestion, how would the astral projector ever be able to control his movements? In fact, how could we control our actions when conscious? The fact that the subconscious will moves the body does not in any sense denote that it does so because it is hyperdynamized. It is no more necessary to dynamize the subconscious will so that it will move the astral body than it is to dynamize the subconscious will so that it will move the physical body. It is suggestion which does it, not accumulated dynamic energy. When we are conscious and wish to move, we do not stop to dynamize the will. All we need to do is to suggest such movement to ourselves, and we move along under subconscious will. And that is what happens when the subconscious will decides to move the body while we sleep. It merely takes a suggestion from the subconscious mind. It is the suggestion which suddenly comes forth, and the reason we use tenacious routine is to impress that suggestion, so that it will come forth by night. If the subconscious will had to be hyperdynamized before it could move the astral body, then how could that will ever move the physical body? The astral body has been calculated by some scientists to weigh approximately 2 ounces. Suppose the physical body of a subject to weigh 160 pounds. The physical would weigh 1,280 times as much as the astral body. Yet we can move the physical body by a mere suggestion, and it is merely a suggestion which causes the subconscious will to move the astral body while we sleep, too, even though it emanates from a dream. If there is anything which needs to be strengthened, it is the conscious will, so that we shall stick steadfastly to our routine and force its impression upon the subconscious mind. Yet even conscious willpower is not necessary, for we can cause the astral body to move out by an appropriate dream. Everything we do is impressed upon the subconscious mind, and these impressions are constantly suggesting themselves, or at least we can recall these impressions, unless we are victims of amnesia. Now, when an act or thought is repeated and repeated, naturally it is more strongly impressed upon the subconscious mind, and naturally it will suggest itself more easily. When we use our conscious willpower and hold tenaciously to a routine, or when we desire the routine so much that we hold fast to it, we impress it so strongly upon the subconscious mind that it stays there, on the surface, or comes to the surface, when we sleep, suggests itself, and the subconscious will is impelled to move the body. That is the main factor involved, the suggestion being realized in action. The subconscious will obey suggestion, not unlike the hypnotized subject who obeys the suggestions of the operator. How I discovered that the desire is an activating factor. Now let us examine desires which are necessities, bodily necessities. I will tell first how I came to stumble upon the fact that desire suggests directly to the subconscious will while we sleep. One warm summer night I retired, and, as I lay in bed, I noticed that I was becoming thirsty. I desired a drink of water, but instead of getting up and appeasing the desire, I did not stir from the bed, to be truthful, merely because I was too lazy, perhaps I should say, drowsy. So, the desire was suppressed instead of being appeased. Several times I was on the verge of rising and going for a drink, but I did not do so. Eventually I was lost in sleep. When I regained consciousness, I was in the projected astral body. It was the result of a dream, a very insignificant dream. I was dreaming that I stood beside the water tap above the sink in the kitchen, and that I could not turn it on so that I could get a drink. I became clearly conscious there, and my hands, astral, were on the faucet, but unable to turn it, of course. There was this difference between the dream and what actually took place. In the dream I thought that the faucet was shut off so tightly that I could not turn it, but in clear consciousness I knew it was because my hands would not make direct contact with the material. The thought dawned upon me then and there that desire had played some part in the projection, so I experimented along this line and found that it was so. One must not conclude that a suppressed desire is no longer a desire, for the suppression is merely by the conscious mind and the real desire is present in the subconscious. A suppressed desire is really an intensified desire in the subconscious mind, and it thus comes to the surface and acts as a suggestion while we sleep. In the case of ordinary desire, we might continue for many days, even months, before the impression of it would be strong enough to assert itself while we slept, but in the case of a desire which is a necessity, such as thirst, even the course of an hour will greatly impress the desire upon the subconscious mind. You know this without my statements. If you do not, the next. To the power of 1 to my mind, this is one of the many strong indications that an astral projection cannot be a mere dream, for in a dream it would be the easiest thing in the world for the dreamer to turn the tap and obtain the longed-for drink. Yet Mr. Muldoon has again and again emphasized the impossibility of doing so while projected. He could never affect matter, as he easily could in a dream. HC time you get thirsty, try to suppress the desire and notice how the desire within you accumulates, until eventually you can endure it no longer. You will notice how forcefully the desire for drink asserts itself. That is just what it does during sleep, suggesting very strongly that you desire water, and the subconscious will be impelled to move the body, for you cannot suppress it now that you are no longer conscious. So, if your physical body be incapacitated, in a condition where it will not instantly respond the moment the subconscious will is exercised, the astral body will be moved out of the physical. Thirst is the strongest and most quickly produced stress which can be used in developing the phase. Next to thirst comes hunger, desire for food. Fasting exerts a double positive influence upon astral projection. You will recall the first reason. We discussed it in Speaking of Energy, and learned that, during a fast, a secondary source of energy is cut off, and that consequently the astral, during sleep, is thrown further out of coincidence, to recharge with cosmic energy the more easily. The second reason why the lack of food is a positive factor in the projection of the astral body is that a desire for food is usually present, especially at the beginning of a fast, and this desire being suppressed by the conscious mind, is intensified in the subconscious mind, the stress growing so intense that it comes to the surface and suggests itself while the subject is asleep. The subconscious will is dominated by the suggestion, just as it is in the case of thirst. So one can readily see the advantage of fasting, while trying to promote astral projection. I shall give some specific directions later for instigating the different stresses intentionally. The action of the unconscious phantom is governed by the subconscious mind. If the suggestion of routine come to the surface of the subconscious mind, while we sleep, and we project in the astral body, unless we become conscious and direct our movements, the phantom will go through the movements of the routine. If the suggestion of any deep-rooted habit comes to the surface of the subconscious mind, while we sleep, and we project in the astral body, unless we become conscious and direct our movements, the phantom will enact the habit. If a dream, suggestion, of moving upward through the air comes to the surface of the subconscious mind, while we sleep, and we are not conscious enough to direct our movements, the phantom will act out the dream. If the suggestion of an intense desire comes to the surface of the subconscious mind, while we sleep, and we project in the astral body, but do not become conscious and direct the movement, the phantom will try to appease the desire. The phantom obeys the dominating impression which it receives from the mind, either mind, when it is projected. Although I have enumerated the factors which, impressed upon the subconscious mind, and coming to the surface during sleep, suggest themselves to the subconscious will, not every factor will act in the same manner, and, as we shall see, all three groups are more or less related: dreams, habits, and desires. For instance, we may have a habit of doing a certain thing, we may also desire to do it, and we may also dream of doing it. The golf bug probably realizes the truth of this. A dream can cause a habit. A habit can cause a dream. A desire can cause a habit. A habit can cause a desire. A desire can cause a dream. A dream can cause a desire, etc. The suggestion which you want to burst forth, as you sleep, must be one which involves movement of body, of self, whether it comes from habit, desire, or dream, or a combination of any or all of these factors. If the habit which bursts forth is one in which you have a movement of self, the suggestion will be to that effect. If the desire which bursts forth is one which requires movement of self, in order to appease the desire, the suggestion will be to that effect. It requires very little reflection to demonstrate that the most powerful suggestion which could burst forth would be from an impression caused by more than one factor being involved in making the impression. The shade of the impression determines the way in which the subconscious will act. It might respond with determination, half-heartedly, actively, weakly, etc., depending upon the shade of the suggestion which dominated it, and the extent of incapacity of the physical, and the extent of energy in the condenser, etc. Again, think of the subconscious will as a locomotive and the suggestion as the engineer. The engine obeys the manipulations of the engineer, and the subconscious will obeys any suggestion from the subconscious mind in a similar manner. The phantom, while projected, may be conscious, partially conscious, or unconscious. If the phantom is unconsciously projected, it will go through the habitual act, or try to appease the desire, whatever it may be, and the subject will not know it. If complete consciousness comes to the projected phantom, the phantom will usually respond to the conscious suggestion which it receives. If, however, a partially conscious projection results, the phantom will perform the action according to the suggestion it receives, and the subject will dream a dream more or less similar to the action. The suggestion of either hunger or thirst, if active during sleep, not only impels the subconscious will to go forth and appease the desire, but very often starts the phantom dreaming, thus a double positive force is exerted, desire and dream. The way in which hunger and thirst come to the surface of the mind while we sleep was observed even by the ancient Hebrews. They also noticed that in the dream the desire was appeased. Thus we read in Isaiah xiv. 8, "It shall even be as when a hungry man dreameth, and behold, he eateth, but he awaketh and his soul is empty, or as when a thirsty man dreameth, and behold, he drinketh, but he awaketh, and behold, he is faint." The starving Baron Trenck, who was imprisoned in a dungeon, had many dreams in which he enjoyed luxuriant feasts. Now, do not think for 1 minute that every time you dream, the astral body projects, or that every time you project, the astral body dreams. A strong desire may come to the surface of the subconscious mind and cause a non-projecting dream, for, although the desire to move out is in the subconscious will, other factors may not be favorable. Yet the conscious mind must be partially functioning, or you would not have the dream. On the other hand, a strong desire might come to the surface during sleep, project the phantom, and the subject might not dream of it. Strong desires and habits come to the surface of the subconscious mind every night, but the conscious mind is not functioning, even partially, so no dream results, yet a projection might result, and this very often happens. In other words, during an unconscious projection, the phantom is actually sleeping, yet, strange as it may seem, the phantom can be walking about, standing still, or lying in the air. You will recall that this state was mentioned before as emotive projection and astral somnambulism. Sexual desire is a negative factor. Knowing how sexual desire becomes active during sleep, it might be thought that this would be a strong activating factor, and that it would assist the body to project, yet this is a stress which works against itself, so far as projection of the astral body is concerned, for such an intense desire would become emotional, the blood in the physical body would begin to circulate more rapidly, and incapacity of the physical body would not be present. Consequently, the astral body would not project, in fact it would be drawn more closely into the physical body instead of moving outwards from the zone of quietude. The subject would be physically restless. The subconscious mind does not conceive of appeasing such a desire otherwise than in the physical body, for it has been accustomed to this and to the body. We are here considering only the copulative desire. Affection will be discussed later. SM being, at such times, in a reclining position, so, suggestion, in this case, when coming to the surface of the subconscious mind by night, would pull the astral body into, rather than away from, the physical body. Phantom projects more easily to a familiar place. Another powerful, broken habit, factor which has a very strong activating effect upon the subconscious will, is that of sleeping in a strange place, that is, in a place where one is not in the habit of sleeping. You probably have no idea how inclined the subconscious mind is to move the body back to the place where it is accustomed to lie while sleeping. Projecting from an unfamiliar to a familiar place. When I was about 16, I went one day to visit my aunt who lived in a neighboring village, 14 miles away. That night I slept there and, before going to sleep, seemed very restless, wishing that I were at home, sleeping in the room and bed where I was in the habit of sleeping. I finally dozed off to sleep and, shortly, I was dreaming that I was flying about with wings, in the air of my room at home, just over the bed where I had always slept. Consciousness came to me in the astral body, and I found myself hovering horizontally over the bed, at home, where I was in the habit of sleeping. Here is another experience, in which I thought I was dead, on first awakening. I did not see my physical body lying upon the bed, as I had been accustomed to, when projected and conscious, in this particular room. The first thought, on seeing the absence of the physical body, was that I had died, and had been unconscious for some time, and that, while in that condition, the physical body had been buried. Where is my body? I wondered. I want to find it. But scarcely had I thought of finding my physical body than I was back in the room, at my aunt's, where it was. You can get some idea, from this, just how slowly the conscious mind functions, in comparison with the rapidity of the subconscious. Before I had time to, consciously, remember that I had been sleeping at my aunt's home, I was back in my physical body. In this instance, you will observe, the three factors, habit, desire, and dream, were all present. Further, I was wishing to be in a certain place, and, in order to appease that desire, the astral body moved to that place. In any projection, the astral body will always project with much more ease to a familiar place than to a strange place. In fact, the astral body, when exteriorized and unconscious, will be found to meander about in the subject's familiar haunts, very much of the time, going through activities which have become habitual to the subject. And this applies not alone to temporary, projected phantoms, but to permanently disembodied phantoms also, phantoms of the dead. Phantoms of the dead are often dominated by the stress of desire or habit. This is one of the reasons for haunted houses and haunted localities. Phantoms of the dead may have desire and habit so strongly embedded within them that they will continue steadfastly in their habits and conduct, even after becoming conscious, simply because the stress is there, and they must work it off. It is this same stress of desire or habit, or both, which the phantom tries to work off when we sleep, and, knowing this, we are able to force the subconscious will to move out the phantom, while we sleep, by instilling a strong stress of desire or habit, or both, which will come to the surface of the subconscious mind during the hours of sleep, while our physical body is usually incapacitated, and the phantom will be liberated to work off the stress of habit or appease the desire. Phantoms of the dead, for a time, after entering the astral plane, do not conduct themselves in a manner differing from projected phantoms of the living. To the power of one, some remain unconscious for a time, others are conscious even before the astral cable snaps, and others roam about in a dream, or partially conscious. While in either the unconscious or partially conscious condition, the phantom is under the stress of habit or desire, and does not deviate from it as long as the suggestion remains active. But, once conscious, he can, if he wills to, break off the continual appeasing of desire and the routine of habit. Yet, as a matter of fact, the stress is so strong that the phantom in many instances loiters about its familiar haunts, submitting to the urge of the stress, even while conscious. After death, habits are unbroken, desires are unappeased, and the stress of them remains. The phantom goes through the process of appeasing some desire which he had in the flesh, or the habit to which he had been accustomed. The unconscious phantom sometimes moves material objects. You have been told that the way in which the subconscious will respond to the suggestion depends upon the shade of the suggestion. Under the stress of deep-rooted habit, routine, the sub to the power of one, the astral plane coincides with the physical plane, just as the astral body coincides with the physical body. Conscious will becomes, on some occasions, actually determined. It uses powerful motivity in every action, and this motivity, while performing a habit, is much more powerful than at other times. This is the reason why phantoms of the dead, while under the stress of habit, in their accustomed haunts, often move objects which their conscious wills could not move. It is the stress of suggestion which is so powerful and deep-rooted in the subconscious mind, that it produces a strong subconscious will response. The unconscious phantom, under the stress of working off a habit, can sometimes move things which another conscious phantom cannot move, because the conscious will cannot produce the motivity, which the subconscious will can produce, and a single conscious suggestion is not as strong as a deep-rooted subconscious suggestion. Many haunted houses are thus easily accounted for. The phantom whose activities are detected there is under the stress of desire or habit, and that motivity is so strong that detection, by earthly beings residing there, is brought about, and the haunter may be unconscious, partially conscious, or conscious. Many haunted house investigators have noted that certain manifestations occur at certain times, regularly. This is because the phantom is under the stress of habit. Here is an example, a haunter under the stress of a desirable habit. I knew an old lady who lived in a room on the second floor of a house, where she spent the last years of her earthly life. She had a habit, during the last 10 years of her life, of reading the Bible, regularly. Every morning between 4 and 5 o'clock she would arise, take a squeaky old rocking chair, which she cherished, and read the Bible while she rocked back and forth, every rock of the chair producing a similar squeak. At 5 o'clock she would close her Bible, then go downstairs. This routine she kept up for 10 years. Finally she passed out of earthly existence. The occupants who lived in the house after the old lady's death were awakened every morning, about 4 o'clock, and could hear the chair, which the old lady had used, squeaking, as if someone were rocking back and forth in it. The story circulated that the house was haunted, and not only did occupants who lived there, immediately after the old lady's death, move out, but no one would ever move into the house after that. Although the people who moved out were not superstitious, so they said, and did not believe in spirits, they nevertheless insisted that they heard the chair squeaking regularly, between 4 and 5 o'clock every morning. This is given merely to show how the stress of habit in the subconscious mind will grip the phantom, and further, how strong motivity is, under the stress of a desirable habit. The phantom was under the desire to read the Bible and under the habit of reading it regularly at a certain place. An early morning haunter. Here is another case which illustrates how the phantom turns to its regular habits, when projected. An old man, 75, lived with his son and his son's family. All slept on the upper floor of the house, the old man having a room of his own, the husband and wife a room of their own, and the 2 children likewise. The old gentleman was in the habit of rising early in the morning and lighting the stove downstairs. He did this regularly at 6:30 o'clock, not because he was under any obligation to do so, but because he wanted to do it. One Sunday morning, at about this hour, the son awoke upstairs and heard the stove lids rattle on the stove downstairs. He remarked to his wife that his father, the old man, was lighting the fire. Nothing unusual in that, and about half an hour later the son and his wife arose. Going downstairs they found that the stove had not been lighted. Still they knew that they had heard the old man, or at least someone, rattling about the stove at 6:30. The wife, going upstairs to the children's room, told them not to make a commotion when getting up, as their grandfather was still asleep in his room. But the children objected to this, saying that they had heard their grandfather go through the hall and downstairs and heard him rattling about the stove. With the children confirming their former belief that the old man was already up, the son and his wife went to the old man's room. He was lying as if asleep, but examination proved that he was dead. A doctor was immediately summoned, and stated that the old man had been dead at least 5 hours. So they concluded that it could not possibly have been he, the old gentleman, whom they had heard and whom the children had heard. Cases similar to this are numerous and on record. The projected phantom was under the stress of habit, and the motivity in such a case is powerful. I shall come back to this subject, of how the phantom may move physical objects, later. The factor enervation in the list of factors which incite the subconscious will to move the astral body may be found enervation. There is no need to go into a study of this factor, for we have already learned that enervation, lack of cosmic energy, causes the astral to move further out, into the cosmic stream of energy, during sleep. We have learned that subjects of nervous temperament move out more quickly, further, and more easily. Enervation is really a bodily condition. It is an aid to projection of the astral body. Now, if you repeat to yourself over and over again, I have energy, I have energy, I have energy, day after day, as some authorities maintain that you should do, to promote projection, instead of aiding projection, you are actually binding your astral body tighter to the physical, for the more energy you store up, the less inclined will the astral condenser be to move to a greater distance during separation. If the nervous temperament be the best suited to projection, then is it not inconsistent to say that to build up the energy is the best method of attaining projection? Surely it is. It is lack of nervous energy which makes the nervous temperament, and to build up one's energy by any means is only to draw the subject further away from the end desired. The astral body does not separate from the physical body at night, during sleep, because it has too much energy, but because it has not enough. That is the reason why we go to sleep. If it were strength of will and accumulation of energy which caused projection of the astral body, the sick person would be unable to project, but this is precisely the opposite of the known facts. Now I have the greatest of respect for all of my contemporaries in this field, but I believe that their theories of good health and accumulation of energy are honeycombed with inconsistencies, and I am dogmatic in my subconscious stress theory. Determining the proper stress to use in developing. Now that we understand what it is that impels the subconscious will to move the body, while we sleep, all that it is necessary to do is to develop one of the factors strongly enough so that it will come to the surface, or stay at the surface, of the subconscious mind, after we go to sleep. In choosing the factor one wishes to use, one should not select the first one he thinks of, but should first of all resort to analysis, and see if it be the factor suited to his individual case, one which would not be too difficult to develop in the subconscious mind, one which would be in harmony with the laws of projection, and one which he has already strongly developed, instead of creating an entirely new one, etc. Ask yourself questions such as the following: have I a desire which I dream of appeasing frequently, or which grips me forcibly in my waking hours? Will it require movement of the astral body in order to appease it? Is it a sex desire? If so, do not use it, it will not permit passivity of the physical body. Is it a desire for revenge directed against someone? If so, do not try to develop it. Have I a habit which I like? Is it a desirable habit? Do I dream of it frequently? This merely shows you that it is strongly rooted in the subconscious mind and suggests itself while you sleep. Is it part of my routine? Do I dislike my routine? Etc. The object of asking oneself questions such as these is merely to enable one to determine which factor would be the best for development, the one which would fit your particular requirements the best. If you have learned the requirements for astral projection, you will be enabled to select the factor more scientifically, so to speak. It is not for me to dictate which factor you select in trying to develop, but my advice would be to try first, for several reasons. First, why go to the trouble of developing a habit of tenacious routine, working probably weeks in impressing it strongly on the subconscious mind, when you can impress thirst there in a few hours, with little effort? Second, thirst must be appeased. The subconscious knows this, and will resort to anything to get the body to water, so it will move the astral out with determination, if it cannot move the physical. I shall give the formula later. Incapacity, the fundamental difference between astral projection and physical somnambulism. Before any specific instructions can be laid down for you to follow, it is necessary for us to study another aspect of the process. We know that the subconscious will does not only have to become possessed of the idea of moving the body, but that the physical body must be incapacitated. After we learn how to quiet the physical body, we shall come to the instructions for combining both stress and incapacity, which must be done in order to produce the desired effect, projection of the astral body. As you will recall, incapacity of the physical body means that it is unusually passive, inactive, so passive that it will not respond the instant the subconscious will tries to move the coinciding bodies. When this happens, the astral body just breaks away from the physical. If the subconscious will attempt to move the body, just as the subject is rising to sleep, the phantom will project, without stopping in the zone of quietude. If the subconscious will attempt to move the body, that is, if a suggestion bursts forth, while the phantom is in the zone of quietude, and the physical body is not in the proper degree of passivity, the phantom slips back into the physical mechanism, and the two coinciding bodies will move. The subject may be partially conscious or unconscious, he may act out what he is dreaming, if partially conscious, may appease a desire, may enact a habit, etc. This is physical somnambulism, and in it the subject may become conscious, just as he can in astral somnambulism. The only difference is that the physical body is incapacitated in one case, and is left behind, while, in the other case, the physical body is not incapacitated and moves along also. A study of somnambulism will help us to appreciate the significance of astral projection, for we can see the similarity, can see that there is but one factor determining whether it will be the physical body which moves or the astral alone which moves. That factor is incapacity, and there is a specific method of bringing it about at will. Before going into this method, let us first observe the similarity between the cause and continuation of physical somnambulism and the cause and continuation of astral projection. The cause, as has been pointed out, is, in both cases, the rising to the surface of the subconscious mind of an impression, which acts as a suggestion to the subconscious will, the nature of the impression being a habit, a desire, or a dream. Once the phantom is projected, or once the subject begins to walk in his sleep physically, the condition of the mind is the same. The physical sleepwalker can act out the dream which is in his mind, so can the astral somnambulist. The movement of the somnambulist is so certain that, if observed, one would be struck by the controlling intelligence. If the somnambulist encounters a person, he will either pay no attention to him, or at once that person will become a part of the dream, if the subject is partially conscious. In the astral body, acting under similar conditions, should the projector in a dream encounter other individuals, either earthly or in spirit, they likewise at once become characters in the dream. Recall the dream in which I was shooting Indians, EXP number 11. Recall that little priest stood nearby. One writer has stated that he knew of a man who went to bed, wondering if he had locked the door of his shop, and that the man was subsequently stopped by a policeman close to the shop he was walking thither in a somnambulistic condition. We can see how this impression remained upon the surface of the subconscious mind and activated the subconscious will while the man slept. Had he been physically incapacitated, the astral body alone would have traveled the route to the shop rather than the physical. You may say, this is not a case in which the impression is caused either by desire, habit, or dream. But it is. So far as the dreamer's mind was concerned, the habit of locking the shop door was apparently broken. There was also a desire to know whether the shop was unlocked, and if so, to lock it. You will find by analysis that all somnambulisms and all astral projections are caused by the same fundamental factors: desire, habit, or dream of the proper type. Even though, by studying the actions of the sleepwalker, one can find no clue which leads him to accept this belief, there is somewhere to be found the clue which leads to desire, habit, or the proper dream. Now, a strong habit may project the phantom, or put the sleepwalker into action, and so may a dream suggestion, even though it leads him away from the fulfillment of the habit. This is what generally happens, too. The subject is always dominated by the strongest suggestion in the mind at the moment. As an illustration of this, suppose one should go to bed hungry, and the desire for food should come to the surface, or remain on the surface, of the subconscious mind. If the desire was strong enough, the suggestion food would be given to the subconscious will. If the subject were not physically incapacitated, and did not become conscious, he would begin to somnambulate. If he were physically incapacitated, he would project, under the dominant suggestion, food. If no dream suggestion occurred, or if a dream occurred which suggested eating, as it would in all probability, the subject would continue under the dominating impression, and might go to the cupboard, to a restaurant, to a bakery, etc., depending upon the relative thought which food brought up in the mind. If, on the way to fulfill this desire, he should encounter, in a partially conscious condition, that is, in the dream, something which would bring a different impression to his mind, he might forget his desire for food and begin to do something else. Suppose he were projected, or physically somnambulating, under the suggestion food, and that the relative impression was of the bakery, and that he was journeying to the bakery. Now, on the way, suppose he should pass the bank, where he transacted business and kept his money, and where he was in the habit of going very often to deposit his earnings. This suggestion might dominate the one he was following, and he would try to enter the bank instead of continuing to the bakery. If he were in the astral body, he would pass right through the door of the bank, go to the teller's window, make his deposit, then walk out again, following the course he usually followed when coming from the bank, after making a deposit. If he were in the physical body, in a somnambulistic condition, he might go up to the door of the bank, dream that it was closed, turn around and start home again. He would be following the suggestion which he derived from the mind which guides his movements, just as it is suggestion which guides our movements while we are conscious. Walsh writes, in certain persons the sleepwalking attacks vary very little. Every word, gesture, or other act occurs at exactly the same time with each performance, just like a drama on the stage. Should the attack be terminated abruptly, the dream drama will, with the next attack, begin at the point where it was broken off. This point is illustrated by a case of Charcot's. His patient was a newspaper man who, during somnambulistic attacks, believed he was a novelist. After he had written 2 or 3 pages, these were taken away from him and the attack terminated. In the next attack he would begin to write at the point where he left off. Once again we see desire, to write, and habit as active causes. Thus we see that physical somnambulism and astral projection rest substantially upon the same foundation. The difference consists merely in whether or not the physical body is active enough to cling to the astral during the performance. An astral projection which was caused by thirst, just as, under the dominating suggestion of hunger, the proper subject may either physically somnambulate or be projected in the astral body, and may go to the cupboard, restaurant, or bakery, so will the same type of person go to the water faucet, or to a stream, or to any place where he can appease the desire, if he be under the suggestion of thirst. When first experimenting along this line, that is, when first voluntarily inducing the desire for water, before going to sleep, I was successful at the very outset in producing projection of the astral body. To strengthen the desire stress, I would prevent myself from drinking for some time before trying the experiment, and at the same time aggravate the desire by thinking of drinking, gazing at a glass of water, putting it almost to my mouth, and then refusing to drink it. Before retiring, I would force myself to swallow about 1/8 of a teaspoonful of salt. This was an ordeal, as you may well imagine, but think of the stress which was put upon the mind by doing this. Imagine the desire for drink which was accumulating even after sleep intervened. The first projection, by means of this method, in which I became conscious was a dream projection. I dreamed that I was walking along a dusty road. It was a sweltering hot day. I was thirsty, but could find no place to get a drink. I pulled off my shirt and tried to moisten my mouth with the perspiration which it contained. My thirst was increasing. I was becoming weak and blinded by the sun, when finally I reached a farmhouse. There was a windmill. I hurried as fast as I could to the tank below it, but it was dry. I looked up at the wheel above me and saw that it was not turning, and, knowing that it would pump water if the wheel turned, I began to climb the structure, intending to stand upon the platform at the top and turn the wheel by hand, and thus pump some water into the tank, then descend and drink it. I began to climb up the ladder of the windmill. Just as I reached the top, the wheel began to turn rapidly and, catching my clothing, threw me outward through the air. I was glad, in the dream, that I was flying through the air, for I could see that I was speeding toward a river near my home, and that I should probably get a drink there. Soon I was by the river and on my knees drinking. It was at this moment that I became clearly conscious, and I found myself in the astral body on the bank of the river, which is less than 100 yards from my home, at a spot where I often sit when fishing. You will notice the various elements in this experience, which affect projection. There was the desire for water, there was the dream of going upward, up the windmill, of moving outward, as the wheel caught my clothing, of awakening at a spot near the river, where I had been in the habit of fishing. By instilling the stress of thirst, I produced several recurrences of the earlier experience which I have given, in which I woke at the water tap in the kitchen with my hands, astral, on the faucet. Remember that when you once become conscious in a certain place in the astral, you will probably again become conscious in the same spot, under similar conditions. A physical somnambulation which was caused by thirst. The following incident was related to me, and illustrates how the stress of thirst may cause physical somnambulism, as well as astral projection. A man of middle age, who had not been in a habit of drinking much water, gradually developed an intense desire for drink. By day he would drink immense quantities, and finally he began to get up in his sleep and do so also. He would rise from his bed, in the somnambulistic condition, slip on his shoes, go downstairs, put on his hat, take the pail out to the well, fill it, and then come back into the house again and drink. This performance was kept up every night regularly. A physician who was called to observe the case pronounced it a nervous affliction, but his tonic for the nerves did not stop the sleepwalking. Finally another doctor was appealed to. The second physician came several nights to observe the man's movements, and noticed all the details. He concluded that it was the desire for drink which caused the man to somnambulate in this manner, and, after examining the man carefully, discovered that he was suffering from a bad case of gastritis, which is always accompanied by intense thirst. By curing the gastritis, the man's intense desire for water disappeared, and the nocturnal activities also ceased. If one experiences an intense desire for wrongdoing, a criminal desire, which he is forced to suppress, and the desire bursts forth while he sleeps, should he somnambulate physically, or project in the astral body, he will attempt to appease that desire. Walsh says, as a rule the acts of the sleepwalker are harmless and in accord with his experiences or inner nature. Somewhere I have read of a clergyman, a most upright character by day, who by night was a thief, and of another individual who resembled Mr. Hyde, made famous by Stevenson. We may attribute these cases to very powerful dreams, or to strong impulses which the individual was able to repress by day. And Dr. Walsh is correct, it is the suggestion which bursts forth while the subject sleeps, and whether the subject projects in the astral body, or whether the physical body clings onto the astral, during the performance, depends solely upon one factor, incapacity. How I discovered that incapacity is an important factor. Let me tell of another discovery which I made, while in search of the causes which brought about my early projections, and you will learn thereby one of the main reasons for incapacity. Being of an inquisitive nature, after experiencing several conscious projections, I concluded that there was a cause, that the seeming miracle could not possibly happen unless behind it there were certain factors which promoted it, and within myself I was annoyed, since I could not at once find the cause. Several prominent spiritualists, to whom I wrote, informed me that no one knew any specific causes for astral projection, that it was a gift, that the Hindus were especially gifted with the ability, etc. So, after retiring at night, I would wonder if I should go out in that phantomous body. I remained awake for hours, thinking of this strange reality upon which no one could enlighten me. I would drift into the hypnagogic state, visualizing projection, thinking projection. In fact, the experiences which I had encountered seemed to have gripped my every thought after I went to bed at night. And to experience such a reality and yet find no one who would believe me, that was the dismaying part. My associates, yes, even members of my own family, ridiculed the very suggestion of such an impossibility, as they called it. I was pronounced a dreamer, and said to be off in the upper story. The scorn which I received from others hurt me. I would cry, often, after going to bed, to think that no one would place any credence in my claims. If I could find the causes, I reasoned, and could make them known, perhaps others would believe in the phenomenon. So, within me, arose a determination to learn what brought about the projections. You have already been made familiar with some of the findings which I then made. This is how I made the discovery that incapacity of the physical body is essential. One night I lay awake in bed and had been concentrating, in a quiet mental mood, upon different parts of my body. My mind came to rest upon my heart. I noticed that it did not seem to be beating at the speed it should, when normal. Next day I went to the doctor and had the organ examined. It was beating but 42 times per minute, but was steady. He gave me a box of strychnine, a cardiac stimulant, assuring me that this would correct the condition. He added, however, that occasionally in his practice he had come upon similar cases, one man, whom he named, having a pulse which was in the 40s also. Now, for almost a year prior to this, a week seldom passed by that I did not experience a projection in some form, and every night I could notice the astral body rising out of the physical, in the hypnagogic state, causing me to jump. I believe I mentioned once before that persons who have been troubled with sinking, sliding, rising and falling sensations and jumps, repercussions of body, are relieved when their physicians give them a remedy to regulate the heart's action. And here is the reason why a heart stimulant will relieve the condition: the heart activates the physical body. If the heart be slow, the body, when at rest, becomes more passive than when the heartbeat is normal or fast. The astral body always withdraws into the zone of quietude during sleep. When the physical body is normally active, the astral cannot withdraw until it becomes passive. Unconsciousness usually intervenes before the astral body emerges from the physical, and the body becomes passive before the astral rises out of the physical. Now, if the heart be below normal, the physical body becomes passive enough for the astral body to move out of it shortly before consciousness is lost, and the subject notices the astral body's movement. Give the subject a cardiac stimulant, and the physical body will not become inactive enough to allow the astral to rise until long after unconsciousness has intervened, and, further, the stimulant holds the astral body very near the physical body. Recall, now, what was said regarding enervation. When the astral condenser is run down, the astral moves out of coincidence more rapidly than when it is holding a fair amount of energy. That is why the subject who is nervous, lacks nerve energy, experiences symptoms similar to those of the subject whose heartbeat is below normal, when entering sleep. A heartbeat below normal has the same effect as enervation. It allows the astral body to move out of coincidence before the subject has lost consciousness. Imagine what would happen if the subject were lacking in neuric energy and possessed a heartbeat which was far below normal at the same time. Well, that is just the condition which I was in. I stated that before taking the cardiac stimulant, which I procured from my doctor, I had experienced a projection in some form almost every week, and the primary stages of projection every night. No sooner had I begun to take the heart stimulant than all trace of the phenomenon disappeared, even the primary stages. I gave this a thorough trial, taking the pellets for 2 months, and became firmly convinced that passivity of the physical body is a necessary requisite for producing the phenomenon of astral projection. I stopped taking the pellets. In a few days I observed that the rate of my pulse was dropping, and it was not long before I was again experiencing the things I had formerly experienced. Then I made another discovery. I could control my pulse rate by means of my mind. After retiring and relaxing, I would concentrate upon my heart, and, in less than 2 weeks I could speed up the heartbeat or slow it down at will. It was not long before I succeeded in keeping the heart at its normal rate, without the use of the stimulant, but the ability to reduce the pulse rate also enabled me to induce complete incapacity of the physical body at will. I shall later on give you the instructions for doing so, in order that you too may be enabled to induce this necessary condition. Some positive minor factors, but while realizing that the 2 major factors of astral projection are proper stress of suggestion and physical incapacity, you will, while concentrating upon these essentials, realize that there are numerous minor factors which contribute to the 2 major ones, and will learn to include every possible promotive element. I shall now enumerate some of these, and you will no doubt be able to think of others. The correct temperature for the experiment is extremely important. If the temperature in which you attempt development be too cool, you will harbor a mental disquietude. If it be too warm, you will likewise be uncomfortable, thereby preventing passivity and relaxation. Further, the warmth of the body will aid the heart in circulating the blood more freely, which tends to prevent incapacity. The ideal temperature is one in which the subject is cool but comfortable. Anything taken into the body which produces a stimulating effect, liquor, medicine, food, will exert a negative force, mostly because the stimulant works against incapacity. Although the emotions should be calm, the mind should not be, as is commonly supposed. One can retire when greatly troubled in mind, and that very condition of being may create the proper stress, which stays at the surface, or comes to the surface, after sleep intervenes. Of course, with hypnosis, when that suggestion comes from the operator, instead of from the subject himself, placidity of mind is essential. In the type of projection we are now studying, the mind of the subject himself acts in the same manner as the mind of the operator, in hypnosis. In self-projection, the suggestion comes from the subject's own mind. In projection induced by hypnosis, the suggestion comes from the mind of the operator. If, in fact, the mind were calm, no suggestion would come forth during sleep, consequently no projection of the astral body would be brought about. The vital factor in projection is the stress of the mind. The conscious mind can be greatly troubled before the subject goes to sleep, and the stress which is there continues to stay at the surface of the subconscious. Recall the incident of the man who went to bed, worrying, thinking that he had left his shop door unlocked. This stress remained on the surface, even after he had gone to sleep, possessed his subconscious will, and he arose in his sleep and went to the shop to lock the door. If you have formed the opinion that the mind must be calm, in order to produce projection of the astral body, you will be forced to revise this idea, for passivity of mind is a sure way to prevent projection. The sleeping quarters in which the subject sleeps should be far from disturbing noises. Noises have a tendency toward interiorization and physical alertness. There is nothing new in this assertion, for everyone knows that when a sleeper is to be awakened, noise is one of the surest ways of arousing him. However, if the phantom has been projected out of the physical body for some distance, outside cord activity range, noise is as apt to awaken him in the astral body as it is to awaken him in the physical body. In attempting development, however, the subject is not apt to make a complete long-distance separation at first, and therefore sounds are undesirable. I have noticed that it is the unusual sound which usually awakens the phantom. The tick of a clock, the drafting of a stove or furnace, sounds which have become familiar and pass unnoticed, do not seem to affect the experiment. Naturally, a country environment is more suitable to the experiment than a city environment, in so far as that sound element is concerned. Anything and everything which contributes to the comfort and relaxation of the body which can be instituted during the attempt at astral body projection should be put into use. It is advisable to use as little bed covering as possible, for sometimes extra weight upon the body will induce peculiar psychological effects during sleep. The weight resting upon the body may cause the belief, during sleep, that the subject is under some massive structure, or that he is smothering, causing dreams to that effect and not infrequently arousing the emotions. But this is not all that heavy bed clothing is liable to do. Several times, when within cord activity range, unconscious, I have noticed that there seemed to be some indescribable weight resting upon me, as if something actually pressed upon me. It was as if my breathing did not satisfy my desire for breath. Again, I have had dreams wherein I seemed to be standing up and trying to walk, while some massive weight rested upon my head, and I have awakened from these dreams and found myself projected and within cord activity range, and still the weight seemed pressing me downward. Observation convinced me that this sensation of being under a great weight, while projected and within cord activity range, was caused by the weight of the clothes resting upon the physical body. Thus, heavy bed covers are not only apt to induce a dream which will prevent the suggestion for projection, but will actually suggest the idea of going downward, underweight, to the projected phantom. There is yet another way of looking at this matter. Might not the heavy bed coverings give to the subconscious mind the idea of smothering, or cause a dream of smothering, which would set up the desire for air, causing the subconscious will to move the body out of doors to appease the desire for air? Of course it could, and if the physical counterpart were incapacitated, the phantom would move out. Just another cause of so-called spontaneous projection, which always has some fundamental law behind it. It would not be advisable, however, for anyone to endeavor to produce a projection of this sort at will, by trying to smother himself into a desire for air, for in trying it, he might take the air permanently. The clothing of the body can bring about results similar to those just mentioned. During the time of the experiment, it is advisable to wear nothing which can be dispensed with. Wearing nothing is better than wearing something. Tight-fitting clothing is most undesirable, for it is not only uncomfortable but shuts off the blood circulation. While it is desirable to slacken the circulation of the blood, it is unwise to prevent its circulation. The less restrictions of this sort the better. It is not that the astral body cannot pass through the clothing or bed covers, for it can easily pass through a brick wall or a steel vault, but clothing and other such restrictions produce a psychological effect which is not altogether desirable. With little or no clothing covering the body, during the experiment, a psychological effect of freedom and lightness is produced, which is a powerful factor in strengthening the sensations peculiar to projection. One can quite understand how such sensations would counteract the sensations of projection, which are lightness and freedom. The sensation of being held down will hold the phantom down, likewise the sensation of lightness will affect the phantom in a similar way, even instigating dreams which have a pulling out effect upon the dream body. So much for the clothing element. It is well to remember that weight upon the body, from clothing or anything else, is an unfavorable condition for astral projection. Projection of the astral body can take place while the subject is seated in a chair, but lying in the horizontal position is greatly to be preferred. Those hours of the night which one has allotted to sleep will probably be found the most satisfactory. There are many reasons why this would be so. When you retire at night, you put away thoughts of worldly activities until the next day, whereas, if you attempt projection during the day, you will say to yourself, "I just lie down for a while and see what I can do, then get to my work again," etc. There are so many reasons for practicing the phase at night rather than during the daytime, that it would seem almost a waste of time to try to enumerate them all, and they should be self-evident by now. At night there are not so many influences to distract your attention from what you are concentrating upon, and you will find that you can think of self, which is important, with much more ease at night than during the day. Although projection of the astral body can take place at any time, I have noticed that, as a rule, it occurs several hours after the subject has been sleeping, and usually after midnight. It is only natural that this should be so, for during sleep the physical body becomes less active. Further, the outside world is more liable to be in a state of quietude after midnight. One of the most certain ways of ensuring the projection of the astral body, and especially a projection which is conscious from the outset, is for the subject to go to sleep several hours, and then begin to project in the astral body, just as he is becoming conscious, that is, while he is in the hypnagogic state emerging from sleep. This is the time when astral catalepsy is commonly met with. It is often several seconds before one can move, physically, when in this condition, first, because the physical body is very passive, second, because the phantom is cataleptic, and third, because the smotivity may be outside the body. This is a favorable time for conscious projection, which, of course, can be brought about by suggestion. Lying upon the right side or upon the back are the two positions best suited to astral projection, although it can take place regardless of the position of the body. Lying upon the back has always produced the best results for me, and you will probably find that this position is especially favorable if you are trying to produce exteriorization in the hypnagogic state on entering sleep. The sensation of floating and of rising upon the air are more easily produced by lying upon the back. One reason for this is that the blood is prevented from circulating freely along the spine, with its many nerves, thus deadening one's feeling of contact with the bed. The sensation, regardless of where it primarily originates, is decidedly what is wanted for producing astral body uprising, provided, of course, you enjoy the sensation. You will notice, too, that while lying upon the back it is easier to note the sensation which is produced when the astral body moves into the zone of quietude. Many people cannot go to sleep while lying upon their backs for this very reason, because they have the sensation of floating just as they are about to lose consciousness, and have slight repercussions. Many people, when undergoing this, will ejaculate a more or less distinct word or syllable concurrently with the repercussion, and will have a breathtaking feeling in the pit of the stomach. Terrifying as the experience may seem to the subject at the time, it is usually amusing to him afterward when he thinks it over. Others become so terrified that they will jump out of bed before they can stop themselves. There is on record the case of a woman who experienced the astral body's movement as she was rising to sleep, and repercussed with a shriek. She jumped out of bed and ran outside before the terror left her. Coincidentally with the repercussion, she would always shriek. She stated that, as she was going to sleep, something would get under her and push her up into the air, then let her drop. She thought that it was her physical body, and noticed that this took place only when she lay on her back. What actually happened was this: the lady experienced the movement of the astral body as she was about to go to sleep. This frightened her and she repercussed with a shriek. She ran outside, she said, to get air. The astral body seems to rise more quickly when the subject is lying upon his back, and it also seems that one has a tendency to cry out more frequently during a repercussion. Hey! Wow! Ouch! And oh! Our utterance is likely to be shrieked out at such a time. Another common sound is as if one had been struck a vigorous blow on the abdomen, so vigorous that it forced the air through the vocal cords, causing a loud grunt. If you are one of those who just cannot sleep upon your back, because of unpleasant sensations such as those mentioned, there is a good chance that you will experience conscious projections. But you must suggest to yourself that you like the sensation, and practice projection as you are entering sleep, e.g. by means of the elevator dream. It is not as easy to achieve success if you lie upon the left side or upon the stomach. Repercussion noises, slight repercussions, accompanying natural sleep, or even the more severe repercussions, like those experienced in falling dreams, will often be accompanied by a peculiar noise which seems close to the ear or inside the head. A very common one is pop, as if a toy balloon burst close to the ear. Another is a loud sizz, and sometimes a sound inside the brain, causing that organ to vibrate. Another is a crackling sound, not unlike the noise made by an electric spark when the positive and negative posts of a battery are touched together. This sound is often heard just at the takeoff of a projection, as well as at the moment of recoincidence, and seems to be in the head, near the back part of the skull. Still another commonly heard sound, at the time of recoincidence, is a zing, as if a string were tightly drawn through the head and then struck, as one might strike the strings of a guitar. At other times the subject may hear a distinct word uttered, it seems very close to the ear, and even, at times, as though the word were spoken right inside the head. The striking thing about these sounds is the way in which they can be felt, yes, actually felt, moving about inside one's head. One's brain seems to shake like the diaphragm of a drum which vibrates when it is struck, and resounds to the power of one. On one occasion I was projected and was standing about 10 feet from my physical body. A dog began to bark, in the street. I heard the dog barking with my physical ears, but could feel it in my astral head. This is very difficult to explain, but is precisely what occurred. It was as if my ears had been projected, and I could feel the sound of the barking inside my astral head. You may have heard of persons who could smell color. Sounds, too, can evoke colors. Carrington has touched upon this subject in his book, Higher Psychical Development. It is interesting to know, too, that at times, during astral projection, the subject may see out of different parts of his astral body, i.e. he may lie upon his back in the air and see what is taking place below him, while looking in the opposite direction with his eyes. Usually, force of habit compels the projector to use his eyes, but this is not absolutely necessary in all cases. I have never known this to be true, however, outside chord activity range, although it may be. There are persons who can do this in the physical body. I personally know a man who seems to have the ability to see out of his forehead. A. J. Davis, in commenting upon his first experiences along this line, says, having tightly secured my bodily eyes with handkerchiefs, he, the operator, then placed the book on a horizontal line with my forehead, and I saw and read the title without the slightest hesitation. This test, and many experiments of the kind, were tried and repeated, and the demonstration of vision, independent of the physical organs of sense, was clear and unquestionable. Lombroso and others have recorded many cases in which persons have been able to see by way of the solar plexus, completely independent of the physical eyes. There are times when the projected phantom can also see things which are many miles away, but as a rule the phantom will instantly move to the spot. Light, a negative factor, the astral body will separate from the physical with much greater ease in total darkness. Although light has a tendency to bind the astral to the physical more securely, it is true that projection can be accomplished regardless of this fact, but, as a rule, only the most advanced student will be successful in doing so. Perhaps, knowing this, you may believe it best to attempt development in total darkness, and it is true that many occultists advise to the power of one. One is here reminded, of course, of the head snapping, so frequently noted in the case of Mrs. Piper, just as she emerges from trance. This has been discussed at considerable length by various researchers, in the proceedings and journals of the SPR, and elsewhere. See this, but, for my part, I should never offer such advice, for there are many reasons why total darkness is not the most suitable condition for the amateur. Perhaps you will say, oh yes, I know why. It is because one wouldn't be able to see if one were exteriorized. No, that is not the reason, for once you are exteriorized, and your sense of sight working, the room, which was dark to your physical eyes, is no longer dark, for you are using your astral eyes, and there is a foggish light everywhere, such as you see in your dreams, a diffused light we might call it, a light which seems none too bright, and yet is not too dim, apparently sifting right through the objects of the material world. Have you ever gone to sleep in total darkness, then awakened, and not been able to comprehend where you were? Do you recall what an unpleasant effect the bewilderment of the situation had upon your mind? You will remember that you had no sense of direction, thinking that your head was where your feet should have been, or that the bed was turned around, or that the door of the room was not in the place where it should have been, etc. Most people have at one time or another experienced such an awakening, in total darkness, when they have lost their sense of direction. One friend told me that he awoke one night, in total darkness, and tried to find the door of his room, and that he was so bewildered that he went in a direction directly opposite to where the door really was, and ran into the dresser. He opened the drawer of the dresser and tried to crawl into it, thinking that he was opening the door. Yet he insists that he was entirely conscious at the time. He then began feeling round the walls for the door, which he eventually found. Suppose, e.g., you go to bed with your head at the head of the bed, your feet at the foot of the bed, the window to the right, the door to the left, the dresser to one side, etc. In other words, you go to bed consciously oriented and aware of your position. You go to sleep. Later you awaken and think you are lying in a different position to the one you really occupy. You have lost your sense of direction. Why? Do you think it is because you cannot see in total darkness, and that this has caused you to lose your sense of direction? Why does not your consciousness, which told you your true position before you went to sleep, direct you to the door which is to your left? Do you think this is because of lack of vision? If so, why do you not become bewildered in your direction when you go into a dark room? Here is the solution of this problem. You might go to bed, consciously aware of your position. In fact, you could get up again before going to sleep and go out of the room with your eyes closed, simply because you know your true position and do not need to see. Why is it that, after you have slept for an interval, you sometimes believe that you are in a different position to the one you really occupy? You can get up and walk to the place where you think the door is, and find the dresser instead. What has become of that consciousness which knew where you were formerly, and could take you from the room with closed eyes? Well, this is what happens oft-times. When you go to sleep, the astral body rises out of the physical, and can lie at a different angle than the physical. The senses, during sleep, are keen, and impress the fact upon the mind that the body is lying at a different angle. When you awaken, in the physical, the impression made by the astral body having been at an angle to the physical is in the mind, and of course you think that you are lying at a different angle than you really are, and, being unable to see, you cannot prove or disprove the matter. Thus, you get up and start toward the spot where you think the door is, and run into the dresser instead, etc. And you will remain under this impression until you can prove, by sight or feeling, that you are under a delusion. Another way of explaining this point: stand a person in the middle of the street, blindfold him, and yet he will know which way he is going, because he was conscious of the direction before being blindfolded. He does not have to depend upon his sight, he knows. But blindfold him and whirl him around, and he will lose his sense of direction. And that is how the movement of the astral body, during sleep, can cause the subject to think that he is, in the physical, where he was in the astral. While sleeping in total darkness, we are liable to awaken, thinking we are in a different position to that in which we really are, and give the matter no thought and go to sleep again. If one in this condition of mind, thinking he is in a different position to the one he really occupies, has an extensive projection, and suddenly something happens which starts the astral speeding back to the physical, the subconscious will land the astral body at the spot where the subject thought he was, and not directly into the physical mechanism. Should a falling dream accompany the fall of the astral body, the subject will think he has been smashed into pieces and have a terrible nightmare, before the subconscious mind can discard the suggestion which it took from the conscious mind and realize the fact, within itself, that the conscious suggestion was a mistake, and that the physical body was not lying in that particular spot. Of course, this is the unusual, but the mind can actually delude itself and can work within itself, as it were. No one knows positively what the mind can do. I believe there are a few cases on record where persons have experienced falling dreams in which they were smashed into pieces on hitting the ground or whatnot. I have experienced a few of these particular dreams myself, and attribute the causes to what I have just pointed out. Still another undesirable result of developing in total darkness is a sort of reluctance in the subject's mind, and this is markedly true if he has ever undergone the terrifying experience of having a violent repercussion in total darkness, with his sense of direction missing. If there is anything which is truly unnerving, it is to experience a violent repercussion, accompanied by a terrifying dream, and then be unable to see or realize one's true place of reclination, after becoming conscious. My advice, especially to the beginner, and more especially to the subject of high nervous temperament, is always to permit enough light to enter the sleeping chamber, so that you can immediately discern your true position, in relation to other objects in the room, the instant you awaken. If there is anything you do not want to do, it is to lose your sense of direction, for this not only has its physical effects, but often affects the astral body as well, and can even influence the subconscious mind. You will find, I am sure, that a dim twilight is the best possible light condition for the practice of astral body projection. An interiorization caused by excess light. An interesting little experience I once had, involving the slight element, may be given here. The room in which I usually sleep has a window which is directly in line with the street lamp. Lying in bed, I can see the light through the window, and it in turn casts its rays into the sleeping room. Sometimes the lights are turned on at a later hour than at other times, by the local electric company, depending upon the time of year, etc. One night I retired when the light was not on, and was succeeding in producing a conscious projection. I had moved upward, out of the physical, to a distance of about 2 feet. Just at this point, on came the lamp, flooding the room with light. And down went the astral into the physical with a zing and a repercussion. I believe that this was the longest zing sound I ever heard, and it felt as if my brain, inside my skull, were trembling, as if I could feel the noise.
Have you ever heard the steel run along the length of the string on a Hawaiian guitar?
That is exactly like this sound, which often accompanies interiorization. From this you can see the detrimental effect of too much light. It might be of interest to add, here, that many people who suffer from nightmares have found that, by sleeping in a lighted room, they have been able to avoid them. So much for the light problem. Carrington, quoting Lance Lynn, has these additional factors listed, which influence astral projection, and, as my own experience has not dealt with them, I give them for what they may be worth, in influencing your own development. Humidity, the air should be dry and clear, barometer high. Atmospheric electricity, if high, this is prejudicial to the experiment. Sex, this should preferably be male for the projector, female for the recipient or seer of the phantom. Sitters, if possible, projector and seer should be alone. What has been stated concerning sitters is only of interest when the experiment is undertaken in collaboration, that is, when one is attempting to appear to a seer, or where the subject believes that the presence of some sympathetic friend at his side would be beneficial to his success. You will find, I believe, that, as a rule, imparting any information to others as to what you are attempting to do will do you no good. About the only time when others can be of assistance, unless they're mediumistic, is when they are asleep. It reminds one of the saying, "You're a good boy, Johnny, when you're asleep." I cannot attempt to explain why the presence of others sleeping near the projector seems to give him strength, but I know positively that this is a fact. And I also know positively that the presence of others, awake and near the projector, unless they are mediumistic, tends to exert a repelling force to projection, regardless of how quiet they may be. Telepathic repercussion here is a little experiment which I first came upon by chance, then tried it intentionally on 2 different subjects, and attained similar results. One lazy afternoon my brother, who was then 12 years old, was lying upon the bed, intending to take an afternoon's nap. I thought I would follow his example and lay down beside him. There was a space of about 1 foot between us, and we both were dozing off to sleep, I thinking of astral projection unconsciously, not intending to project but just thinking in a relaxed condition of mind of that seeming miracle which I had so often experienced. My mind was far from tense, far from thinking of the one who lay beside me. I recall that I was just thinking how the astral body moves out of the physical in a casual manner. Thoughts relating to the phase naturally followed, one after the other. Then came the thought of how the body often repercussed. And no sooner had the thought entered my mind than my brother had a violent repercussion. If this had happened but once, we might call it coincidence, but when it happens repeatedly, there is some foundation for the belief that the mind of another person can influence the movement of the astral body. So, in order to see if this occurrence were mere coincidence, I tried the same arrangement again, and procured the same result. Then I tried a variation of the arrangement, using mental effort. I would lie down beside my brother about the time he was ready to go to sleep, and, by an effort of will, I would try to bounce the astral body back into the physical, after forcefully suggesting in my mind, for some time, that he was out of the body. But this did not work. The forceful, conscious thoughts did not have the same effect as the casual and calm, I might say unconcerned, thoughts of projection and repercussion. I have tried this same experiment on 2 friends since, and have found the result to be the same. Casual and calm thoughts of separation and repercussion produced repercussion, while willful and tense thoughts had no apparent effect. It is possible that the subject, while going to sleep, was in a receptive mood, and that the rising of the astral body into the zone of quietude, being in harmony with the thoughts issuing from my mind to that effect, brought about an attunement in which the mind, in the astral body, received the impressions from my mind, by telepathy, and that, when my thoughts turned to repercussion, the astral body would fly back into the physical. I am firmly convinced, for my part, that almost any 2 people can produce this repercussion, by doing exactly as I have said, and if the subject, attempting astral projection, wishes to have some sympathetic friend try to assist him, I believe that this would be the best possible exercise to attempt first, as it registers, we might say, when the minds are in attunement, and thus the 2 are able to find the route to more extensive experiments. I will give the exercise again, precisely as it should be followed. The subject and his helper should lie side by side upon the bed, or wherever the experiment is to be tried. It is best to attempt it at night, when one really intends going to sleep. The subject must not think of what is being done, merely going to sleep in a natural way. The assistant centers his mind upon the fact that the astral body of the subject is rising out of the physical body. There must be no tension in the mind of the assistant, he must merely visualize, in an unconcerned manner, the astral body of the subject moving out of the physical to a distance of 3 or 4 inches, just as the subject is rising to sleep, and he must not try to force the thought, allowing the vision to bring its own relative thoughts, which concern the astral body, and eventually the thoughts of repercussion. At this last thought, the subject should repercuss. Those who are interested in things occult will find that they will have little difficulty in producing this. The attunement between the subject and his assistant comes about when the subject is rising to sleep, performing the very act which is in the mind of the assistant. From then on, the mental condition of the assistant is what counts for results, he merely holding the thought and vision of the subject's astral body being in the zone of quietude, and then changing the thought to one of repercussion. It will be found that the repercussion is not severe enough to cause discomfort for more than an instant. However, my advice is to attempt astral projection without the assistance of anyone, once you know exactly what to do. When you do this, you develop a stronger self-control, a sort of self-mastery over the situation, and will not be influenced by the conscious or unconscious thoughts transmitted from the minds of others. I have always found it difficult to project when there were others near me. One of the first thoughts one has, when he becomes conscious in the projected astral body, is of the physical body. When one is projected, the very first thing he does, when he senses anyone moving near the spot where the physical body lies, is to interiorize. In fact, that is what I have always done, and I believe that any truthful projector will admit that he has a mistrust of anyone who approaches his physical body while he is projected. For many years I would never attempt a projection unless I were in a locked room, and I have found that, in doing so, I gained an inner sense of security. You will find it to your advantage to try this. If it is necessary for you to have a seer partake in the experiment, let the seer stay in the next room, and have it understood by everyone that they are to keep hands off. Even go as far as Christ went when he said to Mary, "Touch me not." Perhaps you did not understand the significance of this, or why one should go to such extremes, but if you ever experience a conscious projection, all these seeming irrelevancies will be self-evident to you. Do not talk to others of what you are trying to accomplish. This is a valuable tip. Perhaps you are not aware of it, but if you are really desirous of producing a projection, keep the desire locked up within yourself. This stresses it, and that stress promotes projection. Talking of projection somehow relieves that stress within you. To the power of 1 to the power of 1. This is, of course, strictly in harmony with the teachings of New Thought, which also emphasizes this point. HC. How to induce incapacity during natural sleep. We know that the physical body is incapacitated more or less, but in order to make this incapacity more pronounced, the heartbeat must be slowed down. I have already explained how I stumbled upon this fact, and that I devised a method of voluntarily slackening the rate of the pulse. Incidentally, the exercise for slowing the pulse also causes concentration and relaxation, thus eliminating the necessity of special exercises for each of these factors. The first thing which you are to do, upon retiring for the night, or upon retiring at any other time, is to assume a comfortable horizontal position, preferably upon your back. If you cannot possibly tolerate lying upon your back, then lie upon your right side. I am presuming that you are now reclining in a horizontal position, upon your back, with your hands lying at your sides. First, take a deep breath, hold it for a second, then try to force that breath into the pit of your stomach, so that the diaphragm bulges out at that point. Then exhale, forcing all of the air out of your lungs. Repeat this about 6 or 8 times. This is for the purpose of relaxing the solar plexus. A word of advice, in this connection, from Mr. Carrington's book on yoga will fit in nicely here. It is very essential to feel the relaxation of the solar plexus so that you can consciously feel that it opens like a flower, just below the spot where the ribs divide. If that be tense, it will stop your development until you can relax it. The thing to do is to concentrate and get enough control so that you can feel it, and then you can relax. The plexus itself is like a great octopus. It is the biggest nerve center in the body, aside from the brain, and is the ruler of the sympathetic system, the digestive and other vegetative functions. So, for that reason, the stomach should not be full when these yoga exercises are undertaken, because it would press against the plexus and against the heart. That is one of the reasons why it is very important that the stomach should be empty, and the food very light. Next, close your eyes and picture yourself in your mind. Now, starting at the top of your head, think of your scalp and try to move it by tensing the proper muscles. Next, think of your jaw and tense and relax it a few times. Next, think of your neck, tense and relax the muscles in it a few times. Next, your upper arms, then your lower arms, then grip your fists and relax them. Then, starting at the base of the neck, go downward, thinking of each part of the body in turn, and trying to tense the muscles at each particular spot, until eventually you are tensing and relaxing your toes, like a cat tensing and relaxing its paws, while purring. Now, concentrate upon your heart, not with tension of mind, but think of that organ with relaxed thought. You will presently notice its pulsations, and be able to feel them at that spot in your chest. Keep your mind centered upon these pulsations, until they are very pronounced, until you can both feel and hear them distinctly. These are the same pulsations which you feel in the back of your head, when you are projected and within chord activity range, and they are, in fact, the only genuine physical feelings you possess, while projected, unless you feel the weight of the bed covering over you, etc. That is, when within chord activity range, a duplicate sensation permits the pulsations to be felt, as they are in the physical counterpart, and as you can now feel them by concentration upon your heartbeat. The easiest way is to lie upon the left side, but not the preferable way. After you have acquired the ability to lie still, and both feel and hear your heartbeat within your chest, which you will, no doubt, acquire in 1 or 2 trials, your next step is to be able to feel and hear the pulsations in any part of your body by concentrating upon that particular spot. I am now assuming that you are lying according to my instructions, and while in a relaxed condition of mind can both feel and hear your heart pulsations. Listen to them, the pulsations, closely. They are going thump, 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 thump. Now shift your center of concentration to your neck. You can feel your heart beating in your neck, thump, thump, thump. Now that you can feel the pulsations in your neck, shift your thought to your cheeks and you will soon feel them there. Just as soon as you have pronounced pulsations in your cheeks, then go to the top of your head and center your thought on that steady thump, thump, thump. Now you feel them there. Now that you can feel the pulsations in your scalp, shift your thought back again, over each particular spot, the cheeks, the neck, the chest, and keep on going downward. Now you can feel them in the pit of your stomach. Do not shift your concentration until they are very pronounced. There they are, thump, thump, thump. Now you can concentrate a little further down, in the lower abdomen. That is an easy place to feel the pulsations, almost as easy as feeling them in your neck. Remember, you do not feel these pulsations with your hand. Keep your hands at your sides. You must feel the heart within you, pulsating. Now that they are perfectly plain, you can concentrate upon your thighs, both at once. There, you feel the thump, thump, thump. Now concentrate upon the calves of your legs, and as soon as you can feel the pulsations regularly and plainly, concentrate upon your feet, the very soles of your feet, and you will be able to feel your heart pulsations very plainly, in your feet, just by thinking about them. Now go back to your calves again. There, you feel them. Now go back to your thighs again. There are the pulsations. Next, concentrate on your right thigh and forget about the left one. See, you can feel the pulsations of your heart anywhere you concentrate. The next time you have cold feet, literally, try to increase the circulation in your feet by doing what you have just done, to the power of 1 if you will concentrate upon the medulla oblongata region, and cause the pulsations to be felt there, you will know exactly how the pulsations feel at that point, through the astral cable, to the projected phantom. One word of advice before going further. If you are a victim of heart disease, do not attempt astral projection, for the heart is a vital factor, and often runs very low during a projection, and, as you know, the welfare of the physical mechanism, during the projection of the astral body, depends upon the function of respiration. On the other hand, if your heart is reasonably sound, there is nothing to be alarmed at in this suggestion. Now that you have the knack of feeling your heart's pulsations in any part of your body, through concentration, the next step is to be able to reduce the speed of the pulsations, which is not difficult to do. What is desired, in astral projection, is a slow and steady heartbeat. During your concentration upon the organ, assume that you are one intelligence and that it is another, and that it can understand your thought and obey it, for that in reality is about the true situation. The heart is controlled by an intelligence behind it, the subconscious intelligence. Your thoughts, your concentration, can be considered another intelligence. So, if you desire to decrease or increase the speed of the heart, assume that it is governed by intelligence. Perhaps you have tried to drive thoughts or directions into your subconscious mind, and have afterwards said to yourself, "How do I know whether or not my suggestions convince the innate intelligence?" Well, with your heart, you can tell. If you concentrate upon it, thinking that it is beating slower and slower, or faster and faster, as the case may be, and it obeys your suggestion, then you know that your suggestion has reached the controlling intelligence. And further, if you know the mood your conscious mind is in, when it is able to control the heart, then you. To the power of 1 it is also possible, by proper concentration, to withdraw the blood from different parts of the body. Know what mood that mind should be in at any other time, when you wish to sink thoughts into your subconscious mind. Many people become annoyed when they think that their subconscious mind will not obey the very first conscious direction it is given. Many do not like the job of repeating and repeating over and over an affirmation before the subconscious mind will obey. But think a minute. What would happen if the controlling intelligence did act upon the very first affirmation? Suppose you should think your heart had stopped, and suppose the innate intelligence should immediately obey that suggestion? Wouldn't that be a fine mess? Fortunately, the subconscious mind is not so easily controlled, yet it is not very difficult to persuade it to slacken or speed up the heartbeat. To resume, we are now supposing that you are lying upon your back, relaxed, with your arms at your sides, and that you have acquired the ability to feel your heart's pulsations in any part of your body. Now you are concentrating upon your heart again, and if it is not steady you are to tell it, in your mind, that it is steady, and you are to catch the rhythm of the proper beat, and beat time in your mind, concentrating upon the thump of the heart at the proper rhythm. Keep this exercise up until your heart is beating steadily. Now, if it had before been unsteady, and you have steadied it, or if it be naturally steady and healthy, you are now ready to concentrate upon a slower beat. Think only of these pulsations. Concentrate upon these pulsations, which you feel in your chest, in your heart. Beat time to them in your mind, even allowing your head to move slightly at each beat, if it be inclined to. After keeping up this true rhythm for several minutes, begin beating time, in your mind, just a little slower, thinking that the heart is beating a little more slowly. Do not stop concentrating in order to determine whether or not the heart is obeying your suggestion, for you will be able to know this fact in your mind. Continue your concentration, in this manner, until you have the heart beating at the speed at which you wish it to beat. This is not nearly as difficult to accomplish as you might think, and most people, without a doubt, will be enabled to do this after a very few trials. One cannot say definitely how slowly the heart should beat in order to induce a fair degree of physical incapacity. You will recall that my heartbeat, when experiencing projections regularly, was 42 pulsations per minute. This speed could never be considered dangerously slow, and yet it brought about passivity of the physical to an unusual degree. Of course, the pulsations of the heart usually are less per minute while we are asleep than when we are awake, so that if my heart were beating at 42 per minute, while awake, it must have been considerably slower while I was asleep. It is the circulation of the blood, you understand, which enlivens or on the other hand produces torpor in the physical body, in other words, the degree of its incapacity. The normal heartbeat, of course, can be said to vary more or less in different individuals, and, while the physical body naturally is incapacitated to some extent during sleep, it is obvious that a reduction in the pulsations of 10 or 15 below normal will incapacitate the physical mechanism still more profoundly. You can determine your own condition of passivity far better than anyone else can do so for you. You can reduce it amazingly, so much so that it can scarcely be detected in its beating. If, before going to sleep, you should feel yourself becoming chilly, when you should not be, or believe that you can feel air blowing lightly upon your legs or arms, you have the evidence of incapacity which will be profound when you do sleep. You do not, however, want to be cool to the extent of discomfort. Try to hit upon some arrangement whereby you can be both cool and comfortable. On the other hand, if you do not fancy the slow heart idea, and would prefer to try the experiment with the usual degree of passivity you possess during sleep, with a normal heartbeat, you can do so and still not be immune to success, for, as you know, many projections take place in this degree of physical calm. Naturally, the greater the incapacity, the greater the chance of success, and it is for this reason that I have given the instructions for producing more profound incapacity. The zone of quietude, in natural sleep, is governed very much by the condition of the physical body. The more lively the physical, the closer will the phantom stay to coincidence, just as it is governed by the amount of energy stored in the condenser, the astral body. Profound incapacity plus enervation, and the phantom could move 2 feet out of coincidence as you enter sleep. On the other hand, if you go to bed without being tired, having an abundance of energy, plus physical enlivenment, you may not be able to go to sleep, and, when you do, the phantom might only discoincide a fraction of an inch from the physical. Go to bed with enervation, but without physical passivity, and the phantom might move but 6 inches out of coincidence, etc., depending upon the factors involved. As a rule, the phantom moves upward more and more as sleep becomes more and more profound. As one rises to sleep, the phantom may rest but 2 inches out of coincidence, but after sleeping for several hours, the phantom may be 1 foot out of coincidence, because the physical body had gradually become more passive. Most projections take place after the subject has slept for several hours, for this reason. After you have gained the knack of slowing down the speed of the heart, you will be surprised at the way in which that organ responds to your directions, and you will be able to reduce your pulse rate in a few moments. After you have practiced the exercise and can control the organ at will, then do this. Speak to the heart. Say, for example, "Heart, you are now to beat 50 times per minute, and do so until further notice." You will be amazed to find that this organ will keep going at this speed, until you tell it to do otherwise. It is just like hypnotizing the controlling intelligence behind the heart. But do not give the heart this direction, then grab your watch and say, "I don't believe it is doing it," as you time it to see, for this offsets the suggestion you have just given it. If you insist on timing it, do so with the belief that the heart is beating 50 times per minute. Heart control is, as far as I know, the only sure way in which voluntary incapacity can be produced, and in practicing it you are unconsciously promoting consciousness of self, one of the most essential requisites in projection of the astral body. Always remember to amass all the factors which are favorable to the incapacity of the physical body that you possibly can, just prior to your attempt to project the astral body, regardless of the method you use to impress the subconscious will. So much for incapacity. Developing a consciousness of self. In order to be a successful projector, you should center your mind upon yourself, study yourself, get inquisitive about yourself, try to know yourself. There is only one person just like you in the whole world, and that is you. Stop studying other people for a while, and begin to study yourself. You do not have to look 92 million miles away at the sun in order to find something to marvel over. The sun is no more mysterious than you are. When you begin to investigate yourself in this manner, you will wonder that you knew so little about yourself before. Several years ago, I believe it was in Physical Culture magazine, I read an article by a well-known writer who stated that the majority of persons had no idea what their bare backs looked like. They had never seen their own spine in a mirror. Yet these same people believe they know themselves. In astral projection, a consciousness of self is highly important, so begin now to study yourself. Here is an exercise which I believe brought me successful results, and you will find it invaluable as an aid to astral projection. Place a chair before a mirror, for you are now about to try to bewilder yourself with yourself. In this exercise, you are to study yourself so intensely that you almost go to sleep while doing so, and lose your understanding of which is the real you. I am assuming that you are now comfortably seated in an armchair, facing your reflection in the mirror. Do not think of the mirror, and do not believe that you are looking at a reflection. Try rather to convince yourself that you actually are where the reflection is, that you are not in your real body at all. Now begin to scrutinize yourself carefully, trying to find things about yourself which you have never recognized before. See the true color of your hair, the true expression of your eyes, the true shape of your nose. See that cheekbone, those few whiskers on your chin, the lumps on your forehead, the little ridges around your nose. Yes, there is enough to keep you busy looking at and studying yourself for some time, so keep it up. Now that you have given yourself a concentrated examination, stand up in front of the mirror and look directly into your eyes. Keep your eyes centered on the eyes in the reflection. Blink when you are inclined to, but keep your eyes on the eyes in the mirror. Are you growing unsteady now? Are you swaying slightly from side to side? That is what you should do. Now sit down again in the chair and gaze directly into the eyes in the mirror, keeping your stare concentrated upon those eyes. As you do this, repeat your own name over and over, distinctly and monotonously. This has a very subtle effect upon the mind. If, after a while, your eyes seem to be getting dim or misty, Do not let this distract your attention, but keep everlastingly gazing into your own eyes. In your mind, you are to believe that the reflection in the mirror is the real you. You are not to remember the fact that you are sitting in the chair, believe only that the real you is the reflection in the mirror. You are seeing yourself, but the real you is in the mirror. Try to go to sleep with this in mind, and with your eyes centered upon the eyes in the mirror. This delusion of self rattles the astral body, for it puts the idea in the subconscious mind that the reflection is the real you, and after you go to sleep the suggestion to that effect is often strong enough to possess the subconscious will to move the astral body over to the place where the innate mind thinks you really are. Remember, it makes no difference how true the suggestion coming from the subconscious mind really is. If the mind is deluded by the belief that you are at the spot shown in the reflection, it impresses the subconscious will to that effect. You can try this at night if you wish to, intending to go to sleep in the chair, or you can practice the exercise until you are dog-tired, then jump into bed and go to sleep at once, keeping the vision in mind. Needless to say, in this exercise, you are to use your own eyes, in the mirror, as you would a crystal ball. It would be a good idea, also, to read up on how to develop crystal gazing, and apply it in this exercise, for space cannot be devoted to that subject here. This is an excellent exercise, involving the specific requirements of astral projection. Dynamization of projection. One of the strongest aids to projection of the astral body is realization of astral body phenomena, that is, an understanding of the true facts of the actions of the astral body, the causes for these actions, etc. These must be firmly fixed in mind. Sometimes the realization will suddenly burst upon you, and you will wonder how you ever missed such obvious realities before. Some of the readers of this book may, perhaps, open their eyes to these phenomena of self after studying it, and will almost immediately begin to notice symptoms of astral body activity which had hitherto passed them by without a second thought. Read about the phenomenon, think of the phenomenon, and practice the phenomenon intensely, if you would become a projector. Root an understanding of the phenomenon in your mind so deeply that it becomes a part of your life. Become so bound up in the study of astral projection that you will become almost irritable if you are interrupted when thinking and studying and learning about it. That is the big secret in making yourself express the phenomenon. Remember, I am now telling you of another method of causing the astral body to project, that is by stressing astral projection in your mind. This is the direct method, and when it becomes a part of the subconscious mind, the mind is obsessed by the knowledge that the astral body can exist apart from the physical, as well as in coincidence with the physical, and the mind sees, therefore, no reason why the astral body should not be outside the physical. Do you see the significance of this? You are to so thoroughly saturate your subconscious mind with astral projection that it creates a stress of astral projection in your mind. You do this by way of the conscious mind, through tenacious study of the art, practice of the art, thinking of the art. Have one great ambition, to project your astral body. Become wrapped up in this one ambition, and you are not only creating a strong desire, which the subconscious mind, which now knows all about projection, tries to appease, but you are creating a tenacious habit, and will often begin to dream of the phenomenon. This will be especially probable if you go to bed reading about it, and go to sleep with it in your mind. Mark this, if you ever begin to dream of astral projection, that is, dream that your astral body can and does do these things, you are positively sure to experience a projection of the astral body. How could you have dreamed of the actual phenomenon until now, for you did not fully understand it? Perhaps you never knew you possessed an astral body. But now you can saturate your mind so thoroughly with the understanding of the phase that you have a clear vision of it and can become so profoundly interested in the matter that it will be a part of your very life, and you can dream about it. I know, positively, that dreaming of astral projection will cause the projection of the astral body. Even a dream of projection, brought about by the fear of projection, will pull out the dream body. I shall now explain how fear exerts both a negative and positive effect upon projection, depending upon the circumstances under which the fear manifests. When I first experienced conscious projection of the astral body, I'll admit, I used to be afraid, not during the projection, that is the strange part, but before going to sleep. The wonder of it gripped my mind beyond words, gripped me more than anything else ever gripped me. I somehow conceived the idea, mostly as the result of hearing others tell about it, that fiends, murderers, and all sorts of devils lurked on the astral plane, waiting to get into people. One prominent spiritualist informed me that some devil might influence me while projected, or that he might get into my physical body and prevent me from getting back into it again. I admit that I was frightened, so frightened at first that I was afraid to go to sleep at night. I had the whole phenomenon firmly fixed in my mind, and would always begin to think of it, to vision it, just as soon as I went to bed, because of my fear that I should project and would be apprehended by some astral monster. And what did this fear do? It made me project all the more, for my mind was so saturated by the knowledge of what took place, and intensified by fear which externalized my neuric energy, as it does everyone else's, making me still more subject to extensive separations, that no sooner would I fall asleep than I would be dreaming of projection. And every single time the astral body would be pulled out by the suggestion coming from my mind. Many times I would become conscious, emerging from the dream state, and many times I would merely dream the action out, with the body participating. Repercussions were a nightly occurrence. But the fact which baffled me the most was this: why was I so terribly frightened when in the physical, or when first awakening within chord activity range, which would cause repercussion, while, when free, that is, when waking outside chord activity range, I would have no fear whatever? This was one of the observations that impressed me the most forcibly, why the fear disappeared. It was like a player before a football game, or a prizefighter before the fight began, dreadfully fearful and nervous, but suddenly losing all fear and becoming composed. Yet that was the way I experienced it. 1 After a while I became so accustomed to projection that I began really to like it. The devils and astral fiends did not seem to be so concerned about me after all, and they were not, so far as I could see, when I did happen to see anyone very different from the people I had always known. As the fear of projection left me, I noticed that the projections themselves began to occur less often. And as desire replaced the fear, I again noticed that I was becoming more subject to them. I now know that fear and desire produce the same effect in the subconscious mind, carrying the suggestion of astral projection into sleep, or bursting forth in the mind while one sleeps. My subconscious mind had been fairly saturated with the knowledge of what my astral body could do, and by the desire to do it. And that is how you too can develop yourself. Simply dynamize the subconscious mind with the true knowledge of, and desire for, astral projection. With your mind so dynamized, go to sleep. You can saturate the subconscious mind with this knowledge and desire by way of the conscious, think projection, practice projection, and read of projection over and over again. Go to sleep reading about it. Concentrate on going to sleep, on the route which the phantom will take when projected. This latter statement is very important, and I have found that once the mind is dynamized, it is one of the best possible forces tending toward success. But you could not have done this before, for no one had ever before told you the route which the phantom invariably takes in projecting, until you read it in this book. Henceforth, whenever dynamization of projection is mentioned, it simply means the saturation of the subconscious mind with the knowledge of and desire for projection of the astral body. And you cause this saturation of the subconscious mind by way of the conscious mind, the conscious will. What is a will? What is the conscious will, you may ask? Allow me to quote C. Franklin Leavitt: "A lot of nonsense has been written about the cultivation of the will. Most books on the subject get a person nowhere, for they do not explain the process of willing. We have a habit of thinking that to will means making oneself do something, getting into action, effort. It does mean making oneself do something. It means getting into action, mentally. It means effort of the attention. The reader can rest assured that the actual projection of the astral body is anything but what the imagination believes it to be. It is the suspense in the mind which is unpleasant, not the actual projection. No doubt this is true of permanent projection, death, also. Some old Chinese print, showing the projection of the astral body, and the cord or cable binding the astral to the physical body. William James points out that this is all will amounts to attention, simply to hold the attention upon a certain thought or idea until it fills the mind, and crowds all other ideas out of the consciousness. You will have little trouble making yourself do a certain thing, if no other idea is allowed to stay in your mind. For the ideas which impel one to action are those which dominate the consciousness, those which possess the attention. Think resolutely and determinedly. Make plans for carrying your thoughts into action. Concentrate. Shut out all opposing thoughts. In time you will find yourself acting in accordance with these thoughts. After you have acquired this dynamization of projection, after you have your subconscious mind completely saturated with the knowledge of and the desire for projection of the astral body, then your hardest task is over. But remember, above everything else, that your mind must be dominated by this knowledge of and desire for that which you seek, then the stress of it stays at the surface of that mind, while you sleep. You have the knowledge of the art, and the desire stimulates the subconscious will, performing the projection. Typical dreams of projection. Dynamization of projection should produce a dream of projection, and always will if the astral body is in a partially conscious condition, and the stress of projection, is active during sleep. The substance of the dream of projection will depend upon the degree of understanding of projection in your mind. Therefore, it is of vital importance to have a thorough understanding of the phantom's actions and of its route, after separation. Now do you see the fundamental principle of dream control, trying to dream a dream which is true, concerning the phantom? The easiest way to produce such a dream is to have the understanding of and desire for projection take such a grip on your mind that you cannot go to sleep without thinking about it. Then, when you do go to sleep, the stress is still there. It is that stress which does the business. The stress in this case consists in suggesting the very thing you are trying to accomplish. You will remember that I stated that dream control was the easiest method of projecting the astral body. Now I am telling you that dynamization of projection is the easiest method of dream control, for the dynamization of a desire for and knowledge of the astral body's movement will produce the proper dream. For many years my mind was completely dynamized with projection. In fact, I could think of nothing but projection of the astral body, and I would have dream after dream, night after night, that I was projecting in the astral body, and in many of these dreams I would become conscious while projected. In the dream of projection, I would sometimes dream that I was lying horizontal just above my body, even knowing in the dream that I was dreaming. That is the difficult thing to comprehend, and then I would dream of moving over the route which the phantom actually takes on projecting. One is so near true consciousness when he dreams that he is dreaming, and it is a dream of projection, that true consciousness cannot seem to keep from intervening. And that is how most of my conscious projections came about. On other occasions the dream would vary. Instead of dreaming that I was rising in the astral body, I seemed to be standing to one side, watching the astral body project, and then, after a while, I would get into the astral body, sometimes continuing to dream of being there and sometimes actually awakening in it. There are several possible, though purely theoretic, explanations which I might advance to account for this. Thus, I once noticed that the instant I dreamed of getting into the already projected astral body, I became conscious in that body. Keep in mind that consciousness withdraws from the astral body when unconsciousness is produced. It is not the astral body's withdrawal from the physical body which causes unconsciousness. Never! For the astral body can be conscious outside the physical body, and the astral body can be unconscious outside the physical body, and the astral body can be unconscious within the physical body. Because the astral body moves into the zone of quietude during sleep, this does not in any sense denote that the astral body's withdrawal is the cause of unconsciousness. It merely occurs in that way, merely appears that way, but withdrawal of the astral body from the physical body, and the intervention of unconsciousness, while usually occurring almost simultaneously, are entirely separate functions. If we became unconscious every time the astral body withdrew from the physical, there could be no such thing as conscious astral projection. As a matter of fact, many of us can, in the hypnagogic state, when entering sleep, move into the zone of quietude, perhaps only a quarter of an inch of discoincidence, and still be conscious, not realizing the fact that we have done so, and suddenly repercuss in the physical body. This is a very common occurrence. Because unconsciousness usually occurs when entering sleep, just an instant before we make the transit into the zone of quietude, many occultists have seized upon the idea that the withdrawal of the astral body is the cause of unconsciousness. But this is a mistake. It is true also that we can be unconscious in the physical body for some time before the astral body moves into the zone of quietude. This is especially true when the body is under the influence of some stimulant. Thus, there are exceptions to the rule as to when the astral body moves into the zone of quietude. The rule being that it does so immediately after unconsciousness has set in. In some persons it moves sooner, in others later, depending entirely upon the condition of the individual at the time. One can easily see that, in order to have a conscious projection, conscious from the beginning, one should be of the type, or make-up, which begins to make the transit into the zone of quietude before unconsciousness sets in. This condition of the individual is brought about by several factors, temperament, incapacity, etc., as we have already seen. Knowing that it is the withdrawal of consciousness from the astral body which produces unconsciousness, we might in this manner account for the dream in which one dreams that he is projected in the astral body, but is apart from that body, looking on, because the real consciousness is apart from that body. And this theory becomes still more probable in those cases when one has a dream of projection, wherein he is apart from the astral body, looking on, watching its movements, and then getting into the body, and being conscious in that body the moment he dreams of getting into it. Now, if full consciousness withdraws from the body when the astral body is unconscious, consciousness must be partially withdrawn from the body when it is partially conscious. And in a dream of this nature, when one dreams that he is watching the astral body's movement, and then gets into it, is it not possible that a portion of the consciousness which was withdrawn from the body actually understood? Or, perhaps, even a more refined body, coinciding with the astral body, could withdraw in such a dream, and look on as the astral body followed its route, then go over and get into the astral body again. To the power of 1. At any rate, these are the two typical dreams of projection which I had when dreaming of projection. First, dreaming that I was in the astral body, moving over the route the phantom takes while projecting. Second, dreaming that I stood apart from the astral body, watching the astral body go over the route, and that I would then get into it. If you will think back, you will recall that I mentioned that one can sometimes see the astral body from the physical eyes, because of the circuit of sight running across the astral cable. Now, if one can see this, while conscious, why not while partially conscious, and thus dream that he is standing to one side, watching the astral body move? For my part, I believe that this is a plausible explanation of such a dream of projection, when we dream that we are watching the astral body project. The most direct way, and certainly the most sensible way, of to the power of 1 this would correspond, of course, to the mental body of the Theosophists, and might be said to afford some direct experimental evidence in favor of the reality of such a body. HC creating the proper stress in the subconscious mind, which will suggest itself during sleep, is the way that I have just pointed out, viz. Dynamization of projection. Why, I would ask you, should you go to the trouble of saturating your mind with a habit which is unrelated to projection of the astral body, merely because the stress of that habit will impress the subconscious will, when you can saturate your mind in the same manner with a desire for a knowledge of the art, and thus be enabled to dream directly of what is occurring, instead of dreaming of some habit, e.g. your routine? How to instill the stress of routine? However, if you wish to put a stress of routine into your subconscious mind, which will assert itself while you sleep, you must direct all your conscious willpower upon this routine. You must stick with determination to your course throughout the day, never diverting from it under any circumstances. Go to bed on time, get up on time, eat your meals on time, performing your duties regularly and conscientiously day after day, until the routine becomes a part of your very life, until your mind has crowded all other impressions into the background, and you are almost automatic in performing the routine. With your mind so saturated with the stress of the habit, you must hold the vision of yourself performing the routine as you rise to sleep, instigating complete passivity of the physical body prior to taking up the vision of the routine. The subconscious will act according to the power of the suggestion. We enact habits for one of two reasons, or perhaps, in some cases, for both. These reasons are, 1, because we desire to perform the duty, and 2, because necessity compels us to perform the duty. Granting this to be true, the stress of the routine in the mind will impress the subconscious will accordingly. If you desire the routine, the subconscious will move the body more easily than if you were compelling yourself to perform the routine through necessity, which means, simply, that desire plus habit will dominate the subconscious will more completely than habit alone. Dynamization of projection is much easier to put into the subconscious mind than dynamization of a routine, for the routine is too commonplace to grip the mind as powerfully as astral projection, the supernormal, will grip it. To me, attempting to develop projection of the astral body by the tenacious habit method seems emphatically the most difficult method of all, and, if I am any judge of human nature, most people will have no inclination to stick so tenaciously to their daily, commonplace routine. Dynamization of projection is as far ahead of dynamization of a routine, in the production of astral projection, as the steamboat is ahead of the sailboat. Yet either will lead one eventually to the destination he is seeking. Develop a strong habit of the study of astral projection, make a routine of the practice of the art, desire the ability to project in your astral body so strongly that your mind is dominated by astral projection. Induce complete passivity of the physical body, and rise to sleep, visualizing the route the phantom invariably takes, on projecting. That is the way to project at will. You may think it pretty difficult to project the astral body, after all, but when you stop to think that the very causes of astral projection come about unknowingly at times, it should convince you that to instigate these causes intentionally should not be such an exacting task, after all. How to instill the stress of thirst? You will find that, in promoting a stress of desire, which is not directly for projection, that the desire for drink is the most easily instigated and the strongest possible creation stress. If you think that thirst is not stress-creating, just try and see how long you can go without water. Drink is a necessity. Thirst must be quenched. The mind becomes determined to satisfy the desire, and, in projection of the astral body, the subconscious will act in a like manner. A method, and one which I have proved to be successful in promoting projection of the astral body, is the following. First, deprive yourself of drinking for a considerable period of time before retiring, presuming, of course, that you are attempting the experiment on going to bed at night. The length of time during which you must refrain from taking liquids into the system must be calculated by yourself, as different individuals vary as to the amount of liquid required. It is a good plan to begin in the morning, to deprive yourself of drink, and if the desire becomes too intense as the day progresses, take a sip of water now and then, temporarily to allay the desire. Toward evening, just before retiring, if the desire for water becomes too intense, take a few sips of salt water. In this way you satisfy the desire, in some degree, for a short interval, but the desire comes back stronger than ever later on. Also, during the day, try to increase the desire for drink, by almost drinking, thinking of drinking, gazing into a tumbler of water, etc. Just before going to bed, place a glass of cold water in some place where you are accustomed to getting a drink, say in the sink in the kitchen. Take a chair and look into the glass of water, concentrating upon the water in the glass. Keep your eyes fixed upon the water, and, as you do so, center your mind upon your astral body, visualizing it as leaving your physical body in the room where you sleep, and traveling to the sink to drink the water which is before you in the glass. Have this vision of the route which the astral body will take in going to the sink for water firmly fixed in your mind. Repeat this mental process again and again, all the while gazing steadily at the glass of water. Now you are ready to go to bed and to sleep. You are thirsty when you do so, but forget about the thirst and begin thinking of your heart, slowing it down by concentration upon it. If you cannot possibly go to sleep, you will then have to take another sip of water, preferably salt water, and the desire will keep on increasing even after you sleep. But the fact that you cannot go to sleep with ease shows that the stress of thirst is very strong within you, and this same stress, which is keeping you awake so long, is the stress which will impel the subconscious will to move the body after you do go to sleep. As you fall asleep, keep thinking of the glass of water, keep thinking of your astral body moving out, and going to the glass of water. If you have the proper incapacity induced in the physical body, the astral body, during sleep, will move away from the physical, and attempt to appease the desire. The route you pre-planned will at once suggest itself and the body will travel over that route. I want to tell you that this is an extreme exercise, and will easily move the astral body, for, as a matter of fact, the desire for water alone will move the astral body, and the mind will direct the body over a route to some place where one can drink, without pre-planning the route and place. Yet, in going to the above extreme with the exercise, you are more sure of success. After you have practiced this exercise for a while, analyze your dreams, and see whether you have had a dream which would relate to the action. You might even become conscious, while projected. But if you do not, then concentrate upon the fact, while practicing the exercise, that when you get to the glass of water, you will awaken. See yourself becoming conscious, just as you touch the glass of water. Then, when you do project and touch the glass, at least the space where the glass is, the suggestion that you become conscious will present itself. You can instigate the desire for food in the same manner, and intensify the desire by the same method as you intensified the desire for drink, causing the astral body to move out to appease your hunger. This is not quite so unpleasant as the thirst method. If you are a very hearty eater, this method will succeed, but, on the other hand, if you are one of those who find little concern in eating, the stress created by the fast will not possess your mind so completely. You can create your own exercise, while inducing the hunger stress, for if you do not understand the principles involved in the projection of the astral body by this time you are not yet ready to project. In speaking of development in his book devoted to yoga, Carrington says, "The first step is abstinence from stimulating foods and drinks. The pituitary body and the pineal gland are said to be stimulated excessively by these things, which affect the bloodstream in the brain. This is one thing, too, which you must always keep in mind when attempting to develop astral projection, for stimulating drinks and foods work against incapacity of the physical body. Mention was made, before, of the fact that certain foods are said to affect the astral body, and you will recall that some investigators have claimed that one diet has a loosening effect upon the astral body, while another has a binding effect. Be that as it may, I believe that I have tried more diets than anyone in the world, for the purpose of loosening the astral counterpart, much to my regret, and I have eventually come to the conclusion that, even if certain foods do tend to loosen the astral body, the effect is too insignificant for consideration. It is the stress in the mind which moves out the body, and no food at all is the way to create the proper stress. I believe that you will only delude yourself if you think you can cause astral projection by certain diets unless the diet creates hunger, just as a fast will do, or unless the diet favors incapacity, thus aiding other factors in projection. That is about all a certain diet can do, viz. Aid the major factors of projection. Projecting to water. When experimenting with the thirst stress, I had the following experience. There is a spring gurgling forth from the roots of a tree, just at the bottom of a wooded hill, within sight of where I am now writing this account. In order to get to this spring I would have to cross the road in front of the house, go about a quarter of a mile along the river to a bridge, cross the bridge, walk along the railroad track a short distance, to the spot where the track neared the foot of the hill. I had a hobby of strolling along this route often, and, on reaching the spring, would sit down beside it. I dearly loved to drink the water from that spring, and yet for that matter, and time after time I have strolled over to the spring, just to have a drink of its water. Somehow I liked the spring water much better than the water in the village. So, one afternoon, I took the jar and went across the river to the spring, filled the jar and returned. That night I placed a tumblerful of the water in the sink, where I always drink when at home, and gazed at it for about 20 minutes before going to bed. I expected to project to the sink and the water. But, instead of projecting to the sink, where the tumbler of spring water stood, I awakened in the astral body right by the spring. The astral body had passed the sink, passed the river, and stopped at the spring, across the river. No dream preceded the awakening this time, as is usually the case. I just awoke suddenly, to find myself at that spot. Allow me to say that it is always desirable to have some dream precede the awakening, for unless it does so, one becomes agitated for a time. The dream allows consciousness to come on gradually. Chapter 12.